So I'm very strict with the audience. Here's what happens sometimes in a conference. Someone puts up their hand and says, I have a question, but what they really have is a 10-minute speech. Okay, so we don't want 10-minute speeches or comments that are waffling on. I say this respectfully. I would ask you to kindly ask a question to a specific member of the audience or to someone in general. But if you have a comment, keep it brief, please. The reason I do this is so that we all benefit and that we give the chance to everybody. I will start on that end with John. We have, well, this is the third time we do this. Every speaker in some capacity or other talks about disruption, talks about jobs going away, talks about the future being uncertain and so on. What is your message to the young people? What are they supposed to do with this uncertain future? Do we still give them something to study? Will the thing they study still actually exist in the future? John, what are your thoughts on that? John Kilman. Easy question.
That's a very big question. Yeah, look, I'm not the best person to answer it, but what I do is I read a lot of what other people are thinking, and I think one of the most impressive things that I've seen recently, it was actually a year ago, Jack Ma gave a very, very good presentation at the World Economic Forum. And he spoke about the fact that, you know, the way we learn right now in school, right back to school days, is around building up knowledge. But why are you building up knowledge when you can go to Google to find that? You don't need to learn stuff and memorize stuff anymore. What you need to be able to do is to read it and understand it. And where he went with it was that the more creative skills are what we need to be building. We need to be putting a higher emphasis on fine art, authors and painting and those type of creative, where linking it with technology and linking it with the knowledge that you can gain from technology. But that's going to be the difference. So the difference between a robot and a human being is the human being can get tangents. So we need to start thinking about how do we access those parts of our brain that will bring in stuff from a tangent. If it's just a straight line, and if it's just, you know, doing a process, a robot can do that. The difference for us will always be bringing stuff from a tangent. I mean, we think about creativity and creating a space that you can get great ideas. You get great ideas mostly, you know, I coded for a good number of years. The best ideas that I got were in the shower in the morning. You could stay there watching the code for 2 hours, wouldn't make one bit of difference. Get up, walk away, go out, have a cup of coffee, get an ice cream, come back in, and there you have it. There's my code.
So how do we translate that into what we do and say with our young kids? How do we translate that into our education system? Just a very easy question, John.
I think it is about building in that creativity.
Right.
Forget about rote learning. Show people how to access information and get them to use that information to come up with solutions. Build in the creativity of, you know, blank page. Draw something. You know, go from that position that it's not about rote learning anymore, and it's create, you know, more interesting spaces and allow for failure. You know, there is no right or wrong answer when you talk about drawing a picture. One person's picture is as good as another's.
So if I understand you correctly, focus on the creativity, on the artistic side, which we believe, at least now, AI is something it cannot duplicate. You've been with us in Bahrain for a number of years, and we're very happy to have someone of your stature work in the EDB and help promote Bahrain and so on. In your assessment, how are we doing on this front? How well are we preparing the youth of today for tomorrow's uncertain future?
I'm always honest, and that's what gets me into most of my trouble. The fact is that we're mixed. Okay. You know, our education system, we've a kind of a two-pronged education system. We have about 80, well, close to 90 private schools at the primary, you know, and secondary stage. Some of the best schools that you're going to come across. We've about 220 public schools that I would say can do better. We have again mixed private and public third level schools. Some are doing quite well, others are struggling. I do think that one of the issues we have when we get to graduate level is experience. So we have some graduates that come out with really good good degrees, but they generally don't have experience. I think one of the things that we could build into our educational system at third level is the idea of internships. Mm-hmm. And it's a particular problem for Bahrain, because if I come out of the university or the Polytechnic or any of the other universities here, I'm not just competing against other graduates for positions, I'm competing against an experienced expat community at higher numbers than maybe in other economies, where 50% of the economy is made up of expats. So I coming in as a graduate, I have the training, I have the knowledge, but I don't have experience. And we have to help graduates in that space. We have to ensure that they have the opportunity to build up that experience. And you know, there are examples of where that works quite well. The Polytechnic does that quite well, and the employability of their graduates are very good. We need to extend that right throughout, because otherwise graduates, they're at a disadvantage from day one.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Tharoor, you and I, in the previous discussion, we spoke about the youth and we spoke about education, we spoke about parents' expectations, okay? We have young kids here, high school students, university students. We talked about the parents' perspective, but from a student's perspective, who's now, he or she is learning that there's this disruption thing happening. I don't even know if you can get a job, you know, maybe not my generation, but a previous generation, the idea of jobs for life was very much alive. What do we tell them? What should we do with them?
Well, before I tell them, I want to tell the teachers, and I've been doing that every opportunity I get at a school or college convocation. I tell teachers, don't teach children what to think. Teach them how to think.
Right.
A lot of the Indian educational system, again, building on the colonial education system, just crams kids in India full of facts and figures and textbook materials and classroom lectures, which are then expected to regurgitate in the examinations. And I keep saying to them exactly what our previous speaker just said. You don't need all that in the era of Google.
Yes.
You know, 2 clicks of the mouse and find out anything you need to in the real world. What you really need is not a well-filled mind, but a well-formed mind. A well-formed mind is one that deals with completely unfamiliar information, but knows how to absorb it, knows how to discern the necessary patterns in it, and knows how to then apply it to new situations. Now, the point is precisely because of this bewildering speed of change that I talked about in my speech, that you can't prepare kids through your schoolwork and examinations for the jobs that they might be competing for 10 years from now, because those jobs may not exist today. Right. So they've just got to have the kinds of minds and the basic skill sets to be enabling them to adapt to whatever the requirements of the new job are. Plus, of course, to have the aptitude to be retrained, because obviously a certain amount of retraining is going to be required when new professions come around. I mean, when the horse buggy drivers suddenly had to become automobile drivers, they had to be retrained.
Correct.
But the fact is that they knew the basic principles of how to steer a vehicle and handle a road. They just had to learn the technology that made it possible to do that. If they didn't know that either, they could start from scratch, but it's tougher. So what you need is kids who realize that, you know, that really the mark of, I think Einstein said something like this, the mark of an educated mind is what's left behind in your head when you've forgotten everything you studied for the examinations. So the examinations are there, they show you the mastery of what you learned yesterday, What's left behind in your mind is what will help you deal with the problems of tomorrow.
So we have 50 seconds left. You have two PhDs.
Well, I have one I earned the hard way, and I have half a dozen I got picked up for. Really, but one I earned the hard way.
One you earned the hard way. Why and how a PhD?
Well, it's a very good question, because I told my kids, don't bother.
Right.
I enjoyed it. It taught me two things. One was, of course, how to go in great depth into a small subject. In my case, I chose a fairly broad subject. Collect an awful lot of material, synthesize it, and come up with conclusions. And in those days, it was much harder than it is for today's kids, because today's kids have the computers, the laptops, the internet, the ability to load 1 million pages on their hard drive.
You actually had to go to the library.
I had to go to many libraries. I had to write things down on slips of paper and index cards, collate them, reorganize them, and discern patterns in them. So it was a rigorous discipline. That was worthwhile. But the actual acquisition of a PhD that had helped me later in life, is there anything I did that was enhanced by the fact that I was a PhD and not merely a master's degree holder or whatever? Frankly, I doubt it. I mean, the thing is that education is very important and useful when it teaches you things you're not learning in real life.
Right.
So the one good thing I learned was this mastery of vast amounts of material. In everything else, no, I can tell you, my kid, for example, went off as an intern after Yale University to Time magazine. They liked his work so much, within weeks they offered him a regular job.
Okay.
A year later, he had planned to be an intern for a year and go into Columbia School of Journalism to be a journalist. He got in. So he wrote to me saying, he called me in those days, I guess email or Skype or whatever, saying, I got into Columbia. And I said, you're crazy. People go to Columbia to get the job you've already got.
It's a means to an end. You got the end. Why go to Columbia? Yes.
So, I was this guy with 5 degrees, the 4 that I'd earned and others that I'd been awarded. And he assumed that I'd be in favor of his getting another degree, and I told him, don't bother. And I don't regret it. He's had a stellar career since, and he's now with the Washington Post, and he's built his reputation by doing rather than by learning. And ultimately, learning can come from doing. So do.
A friend of mine who worked in the banking industry for many, many years told me this story. This happened around the financial crisis of about a decade ago. So he had an employee with him, very, very capable, doing really, really well. And he said, I want to leave to get a master's degree. So my friend said, well, you've got a job, and we need you, you're doing well, why get a master's degree? No, it's my job to get a master's degree, I'm going to go to the UK, get a master's degree. So lo and behold, he leaves his job, he goes to the UK to get a master's degree, the financial crisis happens, he comes back, and he has no job, but he has a master's degree. So, people confuse, they put the horse in front of the cart. The master's degree is supposed to be a means to an end in most cases. Then if you have the end, then there's no need for the degree. Absolutely. I want to change to John Sinai. So I mentioned earlier in my talk, I had the privilege of visiting your beautiful country. And we met with some remarkable people. And I admire, at least of the early stage of what the ANC could do and the transition and so on. Why does South Africa continue to have an education problem? Depending on which index you look at, it's generally considered a really, really poor education system. Why is it? Does it concern you? And how does one fix that? Easy question.
Yeah, quick. I'll give you just a quick answer to that. I think what happened with South Africa, unfortunately, there was firstly a level of emotional entitlement from the people that were suppressed before. And the level of entitlement didn't create any hunger for growth, but thought they deserved it just because they were there. So that was the first thing. And culturally, that's starting to be weeded out. The second thing is we had a leader for 8 years that was a greedy little boy that created absolute havoc in the country with the Gupta family, and they totally flushed us of a lot of money. And so the focus went off education or anything, actually, for that matter. We are very lucky to have an incredible president now, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is a billionaire in his own right and really is not there to make money. In fact, he's donated half his salary to charity. And he's brought in all the old school ministers back in again, and everything now is starting to take a futuristic stance rather than a how much money can we fit into our pocket stance. So I think as any country is in a process of maturing, And if you think about South Africa as 20 odd years old, we were teenagers just recently. And boy, did we act like teenagers. And now that that's gone past, I think there's a cultural nuance of forgiveness that's required. And again, that's starting to bubble up. So I think besides education, I think South Africa is young. And we are expecting to be compared to Australia's and England's of the world, which I think is incredibly unfair. And as a young nation, I think only now are we starting to find our feet with the leadership that we have. And I'm really excited as a South African for the next 8 years to see what Cyril Ramaphosa is going to do. Plus, I think with the advent of almost 2/3 of South Africans now being connected to the internet, and we have another third to go, which will happen real soon, our access to internet and information is increasing our opportunity to learn and grow. And so of the 50 odd million people that live in South Africa, only about 10 to 12 million live great lives. The rest of the country is in poverty. And so those people to be empowered with information, which is now starting to happen, I think we have a very bright future.
So in 42 seconds, so your talk was very, very insightful. To what degree is this happening in South Africa? And to what degree is that being adopted by either the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the education system, and so how do you see things developing there?
Well, I did a talk a little while back at an African tech conference, and I opened the conference and I called my talk, "We Are Not African." We are not African.
Right.
And what's the unfortunate stat is that only 0.5% of the global VC funding is spent in the whole of Africa. In fact, Atlanta, as one city in America, has more VC funding than the whole of Africa.
Oh, wow.
So we suffer from Africanism. And by that I mean we see ourselves as less than the rest of the world.
Right.
And it's a consciousness that we have to overcome. And it's going to take time. And I think that's what we're suffering mostly. And once we get rid of that consciousness and we become braver and more courageous with the world around us, I think we can step up to the plate. So again, I'm optimistic about where we're going. I do think we have a long way to go because culturally we need to become global, and we're not there yet.
Great, thank you very much. Samir, you're a PhD holder. I believe you went to Stanford, if I'm not mistaken. Princeton. And as someone who's an academic and a creative entrepreneur, which is a rare, I think, mix to have. Education system in Bahrain. What are your thoughts and what is your message to the youth of Bahrain?
I think the education system in Bahrain is transitioning towards where it needs to be. If you look at the future, you've always got to be in sync with what type of skills and what kind of technologies appear to be prevalent in the future. So we definitely see the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning, the whole fourth industrial revolution and its related technologies. So if you look at certain countries, I had the privilege of visiting a number of states in the United States when we were looking for manufacturing sites. And I was impressed with the way that a lot of them approach education. They were actually looking at it very proactively. And in one particular state, they started educating elementary school students in STEM education. So they were already starting to learn engineering. So at the age
for those that don't know what STEM is, can you just explain it?
It's about science and technology, engineering,
math.
And math. So these are the skills that are seen to be needed in the next 20 years. And so what they would do is that they would actually take the elementary school kids, and at the age of 4 and 5, they have them assemble, starting from Lego robots, moving on to mechanical, remote-controlled machines. They start coding from basically around the same time that they learn writing. And so they actually grow up to be conversant with these technologies. And they tell you, what research says is that, the optimum prime age for education is not when you're 20 or 18. It's actually, the ages from between, let's say, 5 to 10.
Right.
And if you can grow the right level or the right direction at that early stage, you will create the right transformation for the future. But in order to do this, where we come to an issue in Bahrain is that you need teachers who are adapted to this, who know this process. And so here, it's not really a lack of will, it's perhaps a lack of assets in terms of educational resources, people who have those skills, even in private schools. So I have two daughters who went to private schools in Bahrain, some of the best ones, but even then I'm not really that impressed by the level of the teachers themselves when compared to what I've seen elsewhere in the US. So I think we have a lot to move towards providing the right kind of teachers, like my colleague said. You've got to have, they've got to have a vision, and it's not about memorization or about doing well in exams. It's how do you create that fertile ground for people to learn.
Perfect, thank you so much. And I agree with what Dr. Tharoor just said and what you said. I mean, it's all good to talk about the students, but what about the teachers that teach the students, right? And I think that's where a lot of energy needs to go to. And there was a time where a teacher's job was the most prestigious job you could have. It was really a very, very respectable job. It still is, but it doesn't have as much status as it used to have in society. And I don't know when we lost this, but really before, a teacher was something that was very, very important. I think we need to go back to that. We need to bring the teacher to the forefront and say, your job is the most important job in the country because you're educating the future. Our hands are not in the kids. Our future is not in the hands of the kids. It's in the hands of the teachers.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Sikiyama-san, in Japan, from outside looking into Japan, you know, we think that the Japanese education system is probably one of the best in the world. But yeah, that's what we think. But and I'm glad you reacted that way. So my question to you, sir, is the education system in Japan, is it preparing the next generation for the future? Is it preparing the next generation of the next Sikiyama-sans to come up and to build biotech companies, or is it lacking something?
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I think the Japanese education system is really not so traditional.
Okay.
No, traditional.
It's traditional.
Yeah, traditional.
Too traditional.
Yeah, but fortunately, my lab in Keio University, that is very cutting edge thinking. And my professor, grant teacher, he has 3 PhDs.
Wow.
And one is computer science and engineering and molecular biology.
Sure.
And he made our the biotech lab institute in 2001. And his lab is really interdisciplinary culture. And many of the Japanese university or labs are not like that.
Really?
Yeah. So, my lab, or the few, the very good leaders is doing change, making change of Japanese education system.
Okay.
So, yeah, my view is really optimistic.
Good.
But I think my lab was really rare case. I think.
So you're the exception rather than the rule in the education. What about in the primary schools and the secondary schools? How is education there? Are you happy with it or are you concerned?
One concern is the language education. I think my biggest weak point is speaking English. So this is, and the Japanese English education is just to write and read.
Right. Not to speak.
Yeah. So this is, I think, one of critical points.
Okay.
But other curriculum is not so bad, I think.
Okay.
Like the science or art or music is, I think, really nice, and the interdisciplinary environment is really common.
Excellent.
So this is when I thought that was what Sohail was getting at when he asked you about the primary system. Because what I've read is that in Japan, till the age of 7, the child is treated like a prince or princess, given complete freedom. They can do what they like creatively, run around, go crazy, and they can never do anything wrong. They're never punished, etc. And then suddenly, bam, from age 7, it becomes a very regimented, very disciplined, very strict, no options, this is the way it's got to be system. I'm just wondering if you feel you can comfortably explain to us why that happens, and surely a child that's enjoyed that much of freedom must struggle to suddenly be, confined within this very the regimented system you described to us.
Yeah. The most
Easy question.
The most of school in Japan has the completely divided the elementary school and junior high school and high school and university. So we have to have an examination, and to enter the good junior high school or high school university is really important thing. So for to the students. But that is, I think, really bad point of the Japanese education, and my school was completely continuous school, so I never had examination to junior high or high school and university. So I really focused on my interest, and so that was I think that was good environment for me. But most of the school isn't like that.
Okay, great, thank you. So before handing over to the audience, I'd like to ask one more question to each member of this panel, and if we can have a sort of a quickish answer. In your different capacities, and you all have very varied backgrounds, in your own way, you are all innovating, be it on the forefront of innovation or from your different perspectives. How do you recognize a good idea? How do you recognize a good idea? And it's open to whoever wants to start.
I'll go.
Go.
I think good ideas are very personalized. I think every single one of us sitting here would see a different good idea. And I think the good idea that shines brightest for me isn't the same good idea that shines brightest for you.
Absolutely.
So I think it's about figuring out what shines brightest for you and following that thread. And that thread has got a constant synchronistic process of bringing good ideas to you.
Fantastic, love it. Anyone else?
I think it's about the problem you're trying to solve. So it maybe goes back to what John is saying. If the problem is my personal problem and that solution solves that problem, then that's a good solution. But tell me the problem you're trying to solve, the why you're trying to do something, before you tell me, what you're trying to do or how you're trying to do it.
You've seen a lot of people in the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Bahrain. How would you rate the problem-solving aspects or abilities of the startups you see in Bahrain?
So it's funny. I went to Paris with a couple of our startups to a startup show there. The name of it escapes me, but it was funny. After walking around for a couple of hours with Abdullah and Mohammed, the guys got they were really surprised at the depth, the kind of the deep tech that they were seeing in front of them. But what they weren't seeing was business solutions. So the what was there, but the why wasn't. And what I found was the guys, and I guess this is maybe an extension into maybe the entrepreneurial ecosystem that we've got here, the business acumen is quite good. Asking, how am I going to make a buck out of this, comes very early. And then trying to solve how am I going to do it is later. But it is important to have that in mind, whereas I would have seen the French ecosystem really, really good tech, but who's going to buy it? Who's your customer? Right. How are you going to get revenue from it? So I would say maybe we're strong on the business side, but we have work to do on the tech side.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Tharo, how do you recognize a good idea?
Well, I was actually, your question brought out the contrarian in me, because I come from a country where good ideas are a dime a dozen. We get 10 of them a week. I mean, 10 of them a minute.
Right.
What our problem is that for all good ideas, we're hopeless at implementation. And so I was just saying, in fact, one of our big think tanks organized an ideas festival. And I said to them, we don't want an ideas festival, we want an implementation festival. There's no shortage of ideas in India. A good idea, I mean, I share everything the two of them said. It's basically what you think strikes you as wow, and it'll work, and if it works and solves a problem, that's a good idea. But the thing is, making it work, getting it to deliver that solution. And as somebody in the real world of politics and public policy, I enjoy a good idea intellectually, but I'm really interested in the ones that people are going to deliver on the ground.
Absolutely, and I say this always with my team. I actually, and I might sound really evil when I say this, I don't actually value creativity that much. You know, I mean, I do value it, but it's relatively easy. You know, I was interviewed on an American podcast not too long ago, and I said the very same thing. You know, a child is creative. You know, my 10-year-old is very, very creative, but I wouldn't depend on him to implement. And we see all this creativity and these creative houses and all that, but I'd like to see a real implementer, and I'm still waiting to see that superstar implementer. So I'll answer my own question before we go to Dr. Samar. Is for me, it's not the idea, it's the person presenting the idea, I suppose, to build on what you were saying. Samar, your thoughts on a good idea?
Yeah, I don't think there's much to add. I think good ideas there are lots of ideas. Everybody has ideas. There could be good ideas, depends on your point of view. It could be used for good or for bad. And so it's important to see what's the purpose of that good idea. So it should, if it goes to help yourself, that's fine, but it could also help humanity, so that's a better idea. So there are different scales, I guess, different factors, you know. Is it personal, is it communal, is it international? That's one. The second is, you know, what do you do with that? Is there the discipline from, say, an entrepreneurship point of view, is there the discipline to turn an idea into a product or into an implementation? And that's key, because there are lots of good ideas, but they're just ideas, they're imagination. And so there must be a question of what's the scale of that idea, how many lives will it affect,
the impact,
what will it do from an ethics point of view, how good or bad is it? You know, is it used for military reasons, is it used for humanitarian reasons? And then you've got the team behind it. You know, what can you put behind it to turn it into something real, and how fast can you deliver on that? And that's really important today, is to look at a good idea and see whether it can be implemented, whether it can be implemented quickly. It seems there is actually like a limited number of themes for good ideas. So sometimes you think of something and you see that, like in the Nobel Prize, you know, 3 people would win it, and they are 3 research teams that were working independently of each other on the same idea. And you see that often in science, in physics, chemistry. It's always like joint teams, somebody from the US, somebody from Japan, or in medicine. So it's also how fast you can execute on that idea and bring it to ground. So it's important, if you do have a good idea, work on it, be very disciplined, bring it to fruition very quickly, and deploy it, and then move on to the next great idea. So don't rest on that one idea.
I love it. I love it. Sakiyama-san,
I think the good idea should be well oriented to the personal motivation, or not only personal motivation or personal the value, but also oriented with the social needs, like global issues, or yeah, I think that
so,
is.
So a good idea in your view is the impact it has on society overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I think the serious innovation must needs this serious personal motivation. So
fantastic. Thank you so much. I'd like to open the floor now to questions from the audience. If you can make yourself known, please. We have someone raising their hand in the back enthusiastically. If we can have someone take the mic to them, please. If you raise your hand again, sir, so that they see you. Do we have, oh, I think we have all the mics here. So you'll have to shout your question. Come to the front, sir, because it seems all the mics are here. Can we donate a mic? Dr. Sarur, can I have your mic? And then we'll have, yeah, if we take it to the gentleman in the back.
Welcome all. I am Thambi Nagarjuna. My main question is to Mr. Tharoor and to the Japanese. So, nowadays the education is very costly. Previously, 5,000 years back, I think there is one Gurukul Sampradaya. Zero investment education started in India. And that was taken even by the Germans, followed. Even the Montessori, Kensu, and all started from the beginning is from India, I think. So where we lost, Mr. Tharoor, our traditional zero investment education, which was the fantastic one, donated to the world. Second one to the Japanese, I think the Japanese education is based on Buddha thoughts.
Based on what?
Buddha, Sri Buddha.
Okay.
And he is telling the English is must. I am doubtful because so far without the English, the Japanese has conquered so much in the technology. And only 64 countries are using English.
I'll need to
Everybody
interrupt you. If you can just summarize your question quickly,
Yeah.
In the interest of time.
So is it a must that English should be mandatory for our
Fantastic.
growth?
Clear. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Come.
Dr. Sarur and then Sikiyama-san.
Well, you know, obviously the investment in education can always be greater. I've been advocating in every budget speech in Parliament that I've made that they should be raising the percentage of GDP that is expended on education. But still, having said that, over these 70 years, there's been massive expansion. See, we forget the British left us with a literacy rate of 16%. Women in India, when the British left, were 8.8%. So there's a huge road to climb. So I agree with you, objectively, we haven't invested enough. But what we've invested has taken us from that 16% to more like 79, and 8.8% women to more like 69. So there's been a fair amount of progress. It's not good enough, and I don't disagree with you there. But I would challenge the proposition that investment alone will do it. There's all sorts of things, the quality of education, learning outcomes. There was a recent study that said that 53% of fifth graders could only read and add at a second grade level. And that kind of thing is hopeless. You may as well not waste your money educating them if you're not actually teaching them skills that they should acquire in school. So that's really the fundamental challenge, I would say.
Thank you. Sikiyama-san, the question is, do you need to learn English? Is this important? Do students, should they be learning English or not? I believe that was the question. If we can pass a mic, yeah, I think you're all sharing one or two mics now. Yes?
Yeah, if we can speak English very well, so that expands the opportunity to communicate with other people, and so I think that is really essential.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Yes, thank you.
May I just add something?
Sure, sure.
I think the whole question of language is going to go away. With AI and faster communication speeds, I don't think it's any more important to have a universal or a common language, because you can do an immediate translation of languages. So I think this whole point, in my personal view, will disappear about 10 years down the line from now.
Okay.
And
So we'll time you if you're right.
I've seen it like voice recognition has improved massively. And even translation programs, compared to when I started using them 10 years ago to today, there's a vast improvement. And that's without the recent improvement in computing power and cloud computing that's happening. So, for us, it's always difficult to imagine what will the future be, but for sure, if you're looking at the field of AI, and the fourth industrial revolution, where, as John said earlier in his talk, it's all about personalized approach. So AI will actually not make you a number, but you'll be a very highly customized, you'll find a highly customized solution for each individual. And I think that will include language, but that's just time will tell.
Thank you. The next question, please. We have a question from the front here. It says 1 minute. I'm going to go over the time slightly. Can we bring on the first front row here, please? One question, sorry, because of time. So choose which one is your more urgent question.
My question is for Dr. Jeshi. The question is, what does an unreasonable thinker need in order to translate his thoughts into reasonable tangibles, and what are the enablers, what are the ecosystems needed?
Thank you, great question. What does an unreasonable thinker need to...
I was hoping someone will ask that question. So, first of all, let's talk about, if you say an unreasonable, if we define an unreasonable thinker in the context of innovation and disruption. First of all, you can't go and tell anyone to be an innovator. You can't just go to a group of people or to somebody and say, go and innovate. So innovation is one of those ephemeral things that just gets suddenly created. An idea gets into your mind, and it could be a great idea, and sometimes you forget it, and hopefully you don't, and you act on it. So what do you need for innovation and for like an unreasonable thinker? What do you need to do is you must have the right nurturing environment. Now, what we have in the past are like, we talked about schools. So schools tend to kill creative thinking because you're supposed to memorize things, and in certain cases I've even seen, even today, you're supposed to write your answers in a particular style. I was working with my daughter about a week ago on something, and she says, Dad, we have to write it this way. We can't write it any other way. And that was really, that's something like that would kill creativity. So you have to have the right nurturing environment. From an economic point of view, what you need then is to be able to deploy that idea very quickly and act on it. So you need two things. You need scale, and you need finance. And so if you go to certain countries like in China, if somebody has a grand idea, even if it's from a little town, the smallest town is probably around 80 million people. So already scale is so incredibly prevalent in China. That's why it's one of the richest landscapes for a lot of IT startups and apps. The Chinese app market is spectacular. I think hundreds of times bigger than anything in Europe and the US, because they find that scale very, very quickly. If you go in Silicon Valley, it's venture capital. So great ideas have access to two things: talent, so you need talent to take that idea and develop it, and venture capital, which is available. What's really difficult here in Bahrain for us, I think, I really admire entrepreneurs and creative thinkers who succeed, because it's pretty tough. We have a very small population, and finance has not in the past been made available. So here, the people who succeed are through sheer will and perseverance. So I think in this context here, you need a lot of that. You need to be very stubborn, and you need to follow up your ideas, don't give up. But I think the EDB among several bodies, and tamkeen are bodies that hopefully work to enable that nurturing environment. And I think we have started Bahrain as an initiative, and a lot of other strategic programs are going. So I think politically here we have the will to move forward.
And if I can just add to that, I think the exposure to unreasonable thinkers is important. And this is what this summit is all about, is bringing unreasonable people or unreasonable thinkers from around the world to expose people to them so that they think and start thinking about implementation. We're going to have an informal implementation panel tomorrow, inshallah. I'd like to thank my guests so much for their wisdom and insight, and we could sit here for hours and hours and just scratch the surface of the knowledge that we have at this panel. So Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Dr. Samar Jishi, Kazuhidis Sikiyama-san, John Sinai, John Kilmartin, all to give them a big hand for their contribution today. Before you stand up, we want to take a group photo. The first group photo is a selfie with me, so stay where you are. We're going to all look at my phone here and try and fit ourselves into a selfie. Yeah, there we go. Thank you, and we can have a group photo with the photographers as well. Thank you. Please. Sean, okay? You can see us all? Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Look forward to it. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we're a little bit behind schedule, but I think it's okay because we are learning. Our next speaker is the recipient of our Unreasonable Thinker Award, and just for those who may have missed my reading of his intro earlier, I will read it again for you very quickly. Victor Ocean is the founder and executive director for African Youth Initiative Network. Born in northern Uganda, he spent 21 years of his childhood as a refugee in the camps where he survived on 1 meal a day for over 7 years. He grew up amidst violent conflict that displaced over 3 million people, where 60,000 plus children were abducted and forcefully recruited as child soldiers, including his own brother. He grew up to become a lead example on tolerance and nonviolence activism, and now is creatively working to address the root cause of conflict in Africa. His organization has so far provided reconstructive medical repair to over 21,000 more victims of rape, mutilation, gunshots, etc. Forbes magazine named Ocean as one of the 10 most powerful men in Africa in 2015. He is the first Ugandan and the youngest ever African nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Please welcome Mr. Victor Ocean onto the stage. Thank you, sir. Will you be speaking from the podium? Yeah? Okay. And if we can give him the... Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Suel, for very generous introduction. And thank you everybody for the opportunity to meet today. It's my first time to the kingdom, and I feel honored, delighted that I had the opportunity to do this now. As by introduction, I am from Uganda. I never dreamt I would be in a place called Bahrain, but it's my delight to be here today. But also most important, Middle East and Africa are close to one another, not only in distance, but also in the history and perhaps the shared vision and the future for peace and stability. It makes me privileged to have been honored today in this beautiful city to be the recipient of the award for 2019. I receive the award with great honor, and I dedicate the award to the people who has inspired my journey to where I am today. It's my joy to find that in a magnificent city, in a well-organized event like this, I can, on behalf of people whose lives have changed mine, I can receive the most prestigious award representing them. To the government of this country, I'm excited, I'm glad, I'm privileged to be in a beautiful city surrounded by good intentions and good people. Thank you so much for making sure I am here. I'm happy to share with you a little bit of my story, but I've so far learned so much from the discussions we have held in the morning to where we are to now. The theme of today could not be any better than the unreasonable thinking. The world we are in, the environment we are in, and the determination we are all focused at makes the subject matter, the theme, the most fitting for this era, for this generation. And also knowing that in the room we are discussing together with the young people, the new generation of global citizens who shares not only borders, but they share the passion for humanity. I'm very happy to be part of this. The world as it is messed up. Messed up by who? Messed up by us, humanity. We have turned against each other. As if that's not enough, we have also turned against nature. But to solve the world problem will not require very smart people. It will require all of us. And that's why when we think outside the box, when we unreasonably think, that's where solution will come. And I'm very happy that we are having a subject of this nature right now. As I said earlier on, I come from Uganda, a country that has been through a long history of conflict. A nation that is proud and green and blessed and gifted with so much natural resources, but being torn down by human greed. Just like the rest of the continent, Africa, we are blessed with so much that we can share with the world, but also we are challenged on how much has been taken from the continent at the expense of the innocent African people. But when I come over, I'm not coming to testify how bad the environment or the situation is, but I'm coming to as a proof of what can be done, what can be possible. So, having been through eras of war, when I was a child, it was my hope to grow up to become a doctor. It was my dream to grow up to become a pilot. I thought at one point if I grew up, I would study and maybe become an engineer. But when war came, everything changed. Everything changed. My visions got amputated. Everything changed because of war. Growing up as a child, it was difficult to imagine if I would see the sunset. You might have grown in this city, in this country, not knowing what life looks like in conflict. I spent my entire childhood in conflict. For 20 years, I was in a camp. But that did not make me less human. In fact, it has inspired me to become a better person, to appreciate what life is. Because everything changed, I also had to adapt and fit to the environment, to the system. For too long, we had wondered, why are we subjected to so much pain in life? Why don't we ever see what is good about being alive? Why would we not eat food? Why would we not sleep in our houses? But the worst of the worst was, as you are hiding in the bushes, you wake up from your sleep in the middle of the night, in the dark skies of Uganda. All you could see is the bright stars navigating through the darkness that forced humanity out of their dignified housing into taking shelter into bushes. And above all, walking around for a few minutes and to find, you ask yourself, where did my brother go? The answer was, war took him away. Your mother was gone to pick up water, will never be seen, and you ask yourself, where did my mother go? War took her away. She's blown up by the landmines. The brothers abducted, and they're recruited as child soldiers. You would never see them again. It went on. We wondered, where did our sisters go? Where did our friends go? The answer was simple. War took them away. And this was a day-to-day life. This was everyday's reality. The question that kept on bubbling in my heart was, when will we ever learn? And when will we ever last? And that provoked the unreasonable thinking of when will we ever last? Because everything else has become temporary. Life was temporary. Peace was temporary. Survival was temporary. Chances of being alive the next hour was temporary. That question of when will we ever last provoked the unreasonable thinking. Today, many years then, I was 13 years old, a little young boy who was hardly eating food, fatigued with despairs of conflict, wondering when will we ever last. I took up a step to form a peace club when I was 13 years old, living in the camp. And the purpose of forming the peace club was primarily to help me talk to my fellow young men who were out of despair, who were volunteering to become child soldiers, who were being taken, who were being forced to kill, to destroy, to rape their own relatives, sometimes their own parents. And they were desperate, they were afraid, they were scared. When I formed the peace club, it was to help me convince these young men to not choose war. It was a very desperate attempt. Everybody wondered, why are you being unreasonable? You're talking about peace that you have never lived. Tell us any single day that you have lived in peace, that you're talking about peace. And I said, yeah, it might sound unreasonable, but that's the way to go. To think about what is not possible, what might not be possible, what might not look possible, but to think about, imagine if, what a wonderful world would be if we were living in peace in our community. So that made me form the Peace Club to help me confront the armed forces, both from the government side and the rebel side, who were recruiting children and taking them as child soldiers. It was a very bold move by nobody, a young man of 13 years old. But I did it because I reached a point I was sick and tired of my own suffering. And I was sick and tired of asking an unanswerable question of where did my brothers go and where did my sisters go? And it was an attempt to seek to answer the question of how long or when will we ever last? This question took me a bit of time, but I chose, it is a decision I made. It was the most unpopular move. Sometimes you have to be unpopular in order to achieve what is necessary. If you are to walk the tune of the world, you may not achieve much, or you may not be different. But if you seek to be different, if you choose to make a difference in the life of other people other than yours, you need to sometimes take unpopular move. And I did it because I felt I was tired. As fatigued as I was, I still appreciated what human life would look like. So, since then, As I appreciated human life, challenges of life kept on bubbling on my world. Struggling with my own education, struggling with my own community, but also trying to understand what did I do wrong that I'm not getting it right. So this is the kind of thing that took me a lot of time to understand. But as I said earlier on, in order for you to be an example of what is sometimes not possible, you need to do the uncommon. Young and blossoming in my own suffering, I realized that majority of the situation, majority of the population wanted situation change, but they didn't know how to get out of that situation. My Peace Academy, my peace building program, my peace efforts started gaining pace, even though it was very unpopular from the beginning. But because everybody wanted to be alive, and everyone wanted to appreciate the benefits that comes with life, I started getting support. The support I could get was my friends joining in to join my peace club, to start talking about peace, start promoting peace, because we're losing every day. And the big question that came was, we are not educated. We will never even be educated. And where are we? Are we dancing a dead song, or we are moving in unknown directions? Yes, it was difficult to get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, today as I talk, my small initiative that we started 15 years ago, formalized 15 years ago, that was a continuation of my 13-year-old dream. To date, has helped restored the dignity and rights of tens of thousands of war victims. We have provided reconstructive surgical rehabilitation to thousands of people whose lips, nose, ears were cut off. Thousands of women who were sexually abused finally got to see their dignity. And we are happy that our call to action was not a failed attempt. It was a right attempt at the right time. The most important thing that has been in my life, sometimes we are confronted by difficulties of life, but how do you navigate yourself when you go through hard moments? I want to say, it reached a moment when it became personal, as I was a committed peace builder, working to promote the rights of victims. I confronted a situation. There was one particular moment in my day-to-day work, talking to young people, helping them to choose peace, counseling them. I met a young man. This young man was my age mate. When he was telling me the stories of what he did when he was taken as a child soldier, he explained one particular situation that became the most trying moment in my career. He explained to me how he abducted my own brother, how he was forced to abduct my own brother, who's unfortunately missing up to now, together with my cousin. So innocently, as he didn't know, he was talking about how he took my own brother, I was confronted with a reality that I never expected I would have. I was weak to listen to him talk about how he tied my brother, how it took him, how he's missing up to now. In my mind, I was blackening out. I was wondering, what do I do to this young man who took my own brother? But something in me kept on telling me, stay calm. He was taken, he was forced to do what he did. I cut short the discussion because I wanted him to not realize that I was freaking out because he was talking about my own brother. I was weak. I was weak. I told him, can we cancel the discussion? Continue the next day? He said, yes. I started driving back to town, blacking out at the same time, wondering what to do with this young man. I couldn't cry. I parked the car, I wanted to cry, I couldn't cry. I went home, I tried to sleep, I couldn't sleep. My father asked me what was going on. I said nothing, I was just tired. I made sure nobody from my family would know this boy took away our brother. At night, I couldn't sleep. I went back to meet him the next day. I said, can we talk about what happened then after you crossed the river? What happened then? He continued with the story. I did not tell him that he talked about my brother. And then, as he was explaining more, he reached another deep end of our discussion. I couldn't tolerate it. I couldn't understand. I said, let us stop here for now. We shall continue and conclude on this story another time. When I came back for about 3-4 days, wondering what to do with him, I was weak. But something in me told me that he's a good material. He could be a young, great young man who could help so many people like you. The best I did, I employed him without telling him, and he is one of my fantastic, wonderful staffs I work with right now, and is a very good counselor. But he does not know that he's the one who took my brother. So sometimes in life, I don't know what exists beyond unreasonable thinking. Sometimes I was wondering, did I do the right thing to decide to recruit him to work with me? But not until when I recruited him. I was not at peace with myself, and I was not at peace with him. Accepting the reality, accepting the truth I was confronted with, gave me opportunity to admit who I am. So, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes I do think that despite my challenges, my suffering of losing family members, I was never too hard to love. I was never too hard to love. I never ran out of love. And I'm also aware that the conflict I went through did not give me permission to hate anybody. In fact, it gave me permission to realize what life looks like beyond hate. If I chose to hate, I would be revenging. I would pick up the arms to fight, to kill, to do what? But I said, I choose love. And in a way, in the fractured world that we exist, it is our role to make hope and restore dignity of humanity. It's our responsibility to see humanity in everyone. And I know I'm talking to young people from Bahrain. What a great country, great government, kingdom. You might have not been through the worst of the worst in life. It's a privilege that you should be grateful about. You are exploring into the world of technology, into the world of entrepreneurship. You are coming up as a champions, but all I can say is, when you look up in the skies of the beautiful land of Bahrain, what do you see? Perhaps at night you see the glittering stars, you see the moon, you see the sun. When you look across the sea, across the water, you find people coming all over from different parts of the world to this great country. Why? It is because of magnetic good leadership. It's good leadership that attracts people home. Good leadership will always attract good people. As your country is a star in the region, all I can say, it is through your entrepreneurship, through your support, that you will make this country the brightest star in the sky. You have a responsibility to do so. Use your privileges to spread hope, to spread opportunity, and above all, stand for what is right. No matter the outcome, we have to stick to doing what is good and good for humanity. As I conclude, sometimes in life we are called to do good things, but we may not know how to do good things. We may not have access to, but if you have knowledge, It might not be you who is going through that hard situation. It might not be your neighbor. It might not be your countryman, but another country that you know might be going through hardship that they could be lowered a bit by your support. Give the best you can to the world. Stand out for what is good and what is good for humanity. We may be asking the question again, with all this technology coming in, where are we in the picture? If I ask myself, I think I will stick with humanity. No matter what happens, I want to make sure there's human face of every technology. There's human face of every development. There's human face of every natural resources. A country like yours will use your oil for the good of development, for the good of the nation. You're using it to fuel humanity, to fuel dignity, to fuel opportunity. Meanwhile, in other nations, they're using oil as a reason to fuel war. This is where you stand unique. You need to carry forward, carry the flag for humanity, carry the flag for justice high up. Meanwhile, for the future, no way we can pretend that we don't need one another. We do need one another. I'm standing as an African. I'm representing majority of many Africans who may never have opportunity to see the kind of development we have in this country. But it's our time to build relationship, cooperations, and establish networks and opportunity so that we can learn and work together. The question of how long must it take before we know too many people have suffered? That question can be answered now. We have the opportunity through technology, through development, through all the support of good leadership and good governance in our neighborhood and in our country to make sure that we answer that question. How long must it take before we know that too many people have died because of bad leadership? Too many people have suffered. Too many refugees in the world. My community that has been through war for over 20 years currently is hosting 1.5 million refugees from neighboring countries. My work, I said to somebody somewhere that it's not my responsibility to criticize warmongers, but it is my responsibility to build and raise peace builders. That is the best way for me I can respond and revenge in the world I have now. Why do we see people suffering? Why do we do nothing when we see people suffering? And why don't we stand up for human? I just don't know why. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Lovely. Have a seat, sir. Grab. I apologize, I made you grab the mic and I just realized there's one here.
We can have two?
We can have two. They can hear us better. That was very, very inspiring and very educational. And really, you know, as a Arab Gulf citizen, when I hear stories like you, it just makes me realize how spoiled we are and how fortunate we are. You know, we complain when the car doesn't start in the morning. We complain when our iPhone doesn't have enough energy, or that we don't have enough, the newer iPhone. And really, when you hear stories like yours, it's just absolutely inspiring, it's mind-boggling, and something we can't relate to, and hopefully we never have to relate to. You said something important. You said we need to see the humanity in everyone. So, and you kind of touched on this, which is sometimes good people do terrible things. How does that happen? How does a good person do something terrible? And how do you deprogram this person?
How do we deprogram a good person?
But before that, how can someone decent do? You mentioned that they cut off ears, they cut off hands, and you know the nose, even the lips.
Yeah.
Someone who's committed such an atrocity, but fundamentally you see their humanity. How can they come? How do they become so evil, and then how do they come back?
I think there's no clear answer to that as to why and what motivates somebody to be that cruel, to do such unjust terror on fellow human. But all I can say is, I have been fortunate in life that I have witnessed the best part of humanity, and I've also learned and I've seen the worst part of humanity. The cruelty that we administer sometimes on one another, whether it be physically, politically, emotionally, or spiritually, is sometimes baffling. I don't understand why. Where do people get the courage, the audacity to torture at best, to destroy the dignity, the human nature that for somebody that you did not create? I don't understand. But unfortunately, it's a situation that I was subjected to. I witnessed every single day of my life.
Did you see it with your own eyes?
Yes.
Some of this cruelty?
I witnessed. I survived. And I spent my entire childhood surviving war, witnessing all the terrors. Now I feel I've also spent so far, my adult life healing the war wounds. So that's why I feel my last remaining life I should spend on preventing war injuries.
On a practical level, I'm just curious, I mean, why this cruelty? Was there a practical reason behind it? What was the purpose of mutilating so many people? And was it to terrorize? Was it just for the sake of, was it ethnic? Why was it done?
Usually it's done to inflict an enormous amount of pain on individuals, but also retaliations on why did you not support their gruesome movement to kill and rape and do what. I grew up in several camps, but it was a population of over about 4 million people where we grew up together. And then the worst would be, you ask, why would somebody think of taking a 10 years, 8 years old child? There's nothing more painful than the parent to see that the little baby is being taken away from Imoa. So our biggest fear was if our parents weren't going to fetch water, would come back home alive. We grew up afraid that our parents would be taken away from us. Also, our parents were sad that they're afraid that we would be taken away from them. And this was the day-to-day, year in, year out. If it was maybe done for a year or for a month, you could say the government was taken unaware. They were not able to counter. But it went on. Days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years, into decades. So you ask, is this an error? Is this an initiative? Is it a project? So this is why it left everybody wondering. Because if it was somehow a mistake or failure on one side, it would have been countered. But the worst also, people felt betrayed by the international community. Why would the international community allow all this suffering for all these years? It's very difficult to be peaceful in an environment of war. It takes a lot of power, maybe strength, not power. It takes a lot of strength to resist the urge to strike back, especially when you're being pricked, when you're being attacked, when you're being denied everything beautiful about life. My first time to wear shoes, I was 14 years.
Wow.
I never wore shoes, I never owned one, we didn't have anything. But after 14 years, that's when I bought my first shoes. Even I became a shoe cobbler, even when I did not have shoes. I raised my own money to buy my shoes. And that was a unique experience. But since then, I've been wearing shoes non-stop. So I've not stopped since I was 14 years. So the thing is, how do we give smiles in the face of the teary faces? It only comes when restored sense of dignity is achieved.
You have 2 daughters, I believe?
Yeah, I do have twin girls, lovely twin girls.
2 years old, I believe you told me.
Yeah.
How are you raising them so that their generation don't go through this? What are you doing differently?
It is my wish, and it is my prayer and my hope that I am the last generation to have gone through what we went through. And I am the first generation to open up a new door of opportunity where we don't need to die trying to survive. We need to live. Every citizen should be given opportunity to live a life of dignity. So I hope my children would learn this as the history, that our parents went through this, but through their struggle, they brought an end to that kind of turmoil. And they opened up new doors that would help us see, because it's the disaster that I would never wish for anybody else.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the audience? If we can raise our hands, and if we can have some mics ready. We have a gentleman there. His hand is up enthusiastically. Again, if we can have someone.
Come on, is it illegal to smile in this country?
You've depressed them all. Is this like...
I apologize for that. But now we can smile. It's okay.
You've moved them so much, they don't know what to say.
I think smile is very good. It's good to smile because it feels good. Eh?
Yeah.
If you try it, you can understand what I'm talking about right now.
Yes, the question.
Hi, Victor. Very, very touching. I really admire your generosity, your kindness, your forgiveness is amazing. I'm extremely touched. But I have one question. Where did you receive and how did you receive your education?
So I actually know that this is a long story, so you need to give him the short version, otherwise we'll say, we heard the story. So if you can put it in a short answer, I'd appreciate it, because we heard it's like an hour-long story, which we don't have.
But it's important. It's important. I'll tell you why. Because we've been hearing about.
Because we're gonna cry even more if you hear how amazing his education story is. It's absolutely. So not taking anything away from your question, Abdussalam. I just happen to have heard the answer to this. So Victor, my only request is yes, answer it, but as succinctly as you can.
Answer like an educated person. That doesn't take so long.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. I am happy that you recognize my education. But I would also admit that I'm probably the most uneducated person in this room. So, in one way or another, yes, Uganda's education has got 7 years of primary schooling, right? But I went to only 3.5 years out of 7. I skipped the rest because of too much war. And I made sure that I went to primary school in my country, and then struggling to buy myself scholastic materials, the books, the pens. I paid myself. I'm one kid who paid himself in school from the beginning to where I am. My parents couldn't afford to buy us food, so there was no money to buy a pen. So I burned charcoal my entire childhood to raise money to pay myself in primary school, through secondary school. But also, I studied in Africa. I did not go anywhere. I never got an opportunity of scholarship from the government, from anybody, when I needed it the most. But now that I speak a little bit of good English, everybody gives me opportunities, go study here, go study. I don't need all that. I don't need it. I needed it then, and nobody came in. I navigated my way out. And now, if I wanted to be a PhD, I would be holding PhDs, but I don't need to be a PhD, all that to build peace in Africa. So I studied in Africa, I studied in Uganda. I went through the worst of the worst schools because I had to pay myself while burning charcoal, raising money on my own. My parents wanted to support, but they didn't have $1 even in a month. So,
yesterday you said that you needed to raise funds for a certificate examination. How much did that examination cost?
It was $12.
$12, and you didn't have $12. And so you had to ask your teachers to help you raise the $12 for you to pay the entrance exam. Is that correct?
Yes, I had to do that. And it was not that I couldn't raise money to pay $12, but I burned charcoal, I cut charcoal to trees to burn charcoal. But as soon as I set it on fire, the thousands of rebels came and swamped my charcoal burning area, and everybody took off. We nearly got killed. And there were so many things. When we tried to save the charcoal, we found so many guns just to realize that planted landmines all over our charcoal burning spot. So we lost that charcoal entirely, which was supposed to help me pay my examination fee. So this is the kind of experience that I went through. But my question was, what did I do so wrong that the rebel would even, in addition to displacing us and making us suffer, would even plant landmines next to the charcoal? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and the story of Abdussalam goes on and on. If you get the chance to sit with Victor, he says how he went back into the night to guard his charcoal so he could sell. And so it's a lovely story attached to it. It's just, you are the unreasonable thinker's thinker. You're just remarkable. I'd like to have one more question, please. We have it from John Sinai here. I know not everyone will get the chance to ask Sabah. If this doesn't take too long, I'll take a question. Otherwise, you can do a one-on-one with him.
Can we take also from a lady after John? From a lady as well?
All right. Yes, you're right. Okay, so he did it for you. So he wants gender equality.
I'm happy with ladies first, to be honest. Why don't you go ahead?
I know her very well.
Oh,
I've known her for 10 years or 12 years. She's like my sister, so I can tell her to just wait. It's okay.
Okay, great. I've been hugely touched by your story. I mean, we had lunch yesterday together, and I've been thinking about your journey so much, and it's made me so grateful about my journey. My question to you is, I haven't seen somebody or have met somebody with your experience who has come out of it with so much love and so much elegance in the way you hold yourself and the way you speak about it. It seems as though the anger is not there. Pretty similar to Nelson Mandela, to be honest. And I find the same energy from you. What are you doing in as far as getting into leadership in Africa, and how desperately we need you to be leading the way? What are your plans, and what are you doing, and how can I help?
That's a good question.
You're a strategist, right?
Yes, that's good. Thank you so much for a very good compliment. And yes, I agree. Hate is so exhausting. Anger is such an emotional cancer that it does not consume the person you are angry with, but you who is going through that moment of anger. So I found it really difficult, and it blurred my world when I looked at everyone as my enemy. I think also I came to realize that not everyone who attacked you are your enemies. Sometimes you need to dig the best in them. I know every human has got their back and forth sides, but I'm not focusing on how bad everybody is. I'm focusing what good can you get out of every one of us. So to me, it's about emotional healing. If I allowed myself to be consumed with this emotional anger, I don't think I would. I was drowning in my own fatigue of despair, and I said, let me swim out of this fatigue. Let me jog on my way out, and I could see some light at that. In terms of leadership in Africa, yes, we need to step forward. We can't keep saying politics is only for bad people. It's because we allow bad characters to consume political space, and that's why the extremist takes charge, because we, the good people, fails to step forward. What I would say is, it is very important to step forward, not because you want to win only, but because you want to learn and improve a lot already. Because even those those who are now bad leaders, who are once very promising young Africans, who are then very good, all of a sudden they turn around. So, but we want to say, can we plant in the right seeds of leadership, of tolerance, of inclusion? Let go the tribal, tear down the tribal barriers and build walls of democracy to shield the citizens, as opposed to creating, walls of hatred and tribalism. This is what is causing, we are seeing every new day, Africans dying in the sea trying to cross to Europe. This is what could have been avoided. So I think, yes, we need to step forward, but above all, come together while we are planting the right seeds, leadership based on reconciliation, on unity. We need unity, peace, and reconciliation. These are the three pillars of development that we need in Africa. And I think it's not something to do easily, but it's the best opportunity to try it. And when can we do that? If we worked together 50 years ago, Africa would be further than Middle East right now. But what will happen if we work together for the next 50 years? We'll even be better than Middle East. So when do we start it?
Now, let's not get carried away. Okay.
Thank you.
I want you to make me a promise.
That?
When you are the president of Uganda, you come back to visit us in the Unreasonable Thinking Summit again. Is that?
Thank you for the blessing. I will be here even if I'm the president or not, no problem.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sabah, our last question, we'll have to take it from Sabah. Just raise your hand and then we'll have to wrap it up because we're a little bit behind schedule. I know there's some questions. Victor will be happy to speak to anyone. He loves smiling and speaking to anyone, so he'll be available offline.
and sleeping.
I've got to bring this train back on time a little bit, as much as I can. Saba is a former Falakonian, has been involved with me for too long that both of us care to remember. She was involved in the previous 2 Unreasonable Thinking Summits, and she's now running her own startup gaming studio. Go ahead, Saba.
First of all, Victor, it was inspirational to hear you and very sobering. I want to ask on an individual level, for a person like me or anyone in this room, what can we, since we talked about humans being increasingly connected, what can we in this situation do something for someone who has been in your situation in the past on an individual level or even on a corporate level? What can a person like me do for a person? How can we restore dignity? How can we be a part of this change?
Thank you so much. That's what makes women unique. They ask a question that is very human and they look at it, what can I do now? Not about politics of the world. Okay, thank you so much for asking that.
Do you see what just did to you, John?
And I think it's a good thing to think about. Yes, at the individual level we can contribute, but also it's about not supporting our emotion, but supporting our vision. The vision we have now is how do we build an infrastructure for peace building. Where I come from, right now in northern Uganda, we have a population of about 13 million people without a single CT scan. Wow. 13 million people without a single CT scan. And yet we are conducting surgeries. We have to get the imaging done. It's too expensive to afford. Population cannot even afford privately. But now we are saying we have, to build a peace academy, we're also building the hospital we need to acquire. If there would be any way that all of us in this room would reach out to our relatives and around the world to just help us get one imaging machine, it would save thousands of lives. X-ray machine or whatever we can do, we can reach anybody, even if second-hand, would help us do something. So that would be a very practical support I would call upon. But of course, we can, through the connections and all that, build, and I can share with my brother here the big vision, then you can see how we can reach out to many other people. But I really want to see if we can build more relationship between Bahrain and Africa. This would be a good opportunity. Let's build connection with the young Africans. The young Bahrainians, you need young Africans just as young Africans need you so that we can cement the relationship. We tear down the borders in our heart but open up for the spirit of care for one another. So I think this is a good opportunity. Thank you so much for asking that question.
I think if I may build on that, and I say that in any event or almost every event where I speak as representative of the Bahrain Foundation for Dialogue, it's all of our responsibility. Just as Victor said, if you don't participate, the others take over. It's all of our responsibilities to make a change. And the bare minimum you can do is if you see some dirt on the street, pick it up and put it in the trash. That everybody has a responsibility. It can be this small or this huge, but it's everyone's responsibility to make a change. Brother, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for coming down.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for making me meet the wonderful people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have a small token of appreciation for you. A small token, yeah, that's not just a small token.
Okay, I'll carry so many.
Yeah, we can. طيب وين تبينا؟ Okay, well let's go here. He says he doesn't want us behind the screen.
Yeah, I get something tall, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. So, may I ask everybody to be back here in exactly 14 minutes. That would be 4 o'clock. Very quick break, guys. Use the facilities, quick drink, and back in here. We're going to start sharp to bring it back on time. One more, one second. There's one other thing. Okay. If you've not registered for the breakout, they're telling me go register at the booth for tomorrow's breakouts. We have 3 breakouts tomorrow. Register if you've not registered for that yet. And also use the, the barcode. We want your feedback. Use the barcode, scan the barcode. You can do your feedback. Back in 13 minutes, please. Thank you. I would like very much to get this train back on time. So I'd ask everybody to sit down, please. We will lock the rooms in a minute. The people surrounding Victor, can you guys see him afterwards, please? Yeah, I know you want to speak to him. Dr. Samar, I'm watching you. Sukiyama-san, I'm watching you. Don't make me let you stand in the corner. I'll do it. I was brought up in Riyadh school. This is in the 80s when the Khizarana was a big part of education. Yeah, so I'm the Khizarana generation. So this is me being nice. Good. We'll just give everybody 1 more minute to come in and then close the doors. Samar, are you mic'd up? Are you mic'd up? Why don't you do that now? You have slides, or are you going to do? You have slides. Okay, so you just get. And see the gentleman here.
As soon as Sohail introduces put this one up, and this is for back. This is back. Okay.
So I'm very, very proud that our next unreasonable thinker is a Bahraini. Dr. Samar Al-Jishi heads one of the Middle East's foremost multinational industrial groups, BFG International. After a distinguished career in academia, Dr. Al-Jishi joined BFG International in 1992 and has brought it forward from a small industrial firm into what is today a large, leading global firm specializing in engineering and manufacturing of a diversified range of composite material-based products. Dr. Samar Al-Jishi, please come to the stage.
Thank you very much, Sohail, for the introduction. So this started out Reasonable Thinking Summit, and I said, et tu, Brutus? That's what my daughters say every day when I tell them they can't do something that they want, that I'm an unreasonable thinker. So I wasn't quite sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but we move forward, and I learned that, in fact, it is a good thing. I'm here to talk to you, to give you a story of how someone from Bahrain could grow up, could aspire to do a lot, to be visible on the international stage, and to have strong aspirations. So being from a small country in a small island is not an obstacle to let your imagination go far and to let your aspirations go wide. So what is it? You've heard a lot about education, and we heard a lot about environment this morning. So what is it that makes somebody become an unreasonable thinker? I mean, and I think maybe a good way to address that, I was thinking about this as I heard various speakers talk this morning, and I would like to share with you my journey from a young kid up to now, and the choices that I made, the background I had, and maybe from that you kind of can see where and how these decisions were made that led to where we are here today. So it started out when I was a very young kid. So I was a very little baby, started walking reasonably early in life, and I would get into everything that was within range. So I was a tinkerer. And I think I cost my parents a fortune and money in replacing air conditioners because I kept sticking things into them and pulling things out of them. And so they would just take me away. And I was very shy, so I wouldn't do it in front of them. But I'd just go in there and attack everything and open everything. And that spirit, I think, kind of continued. So I went then to elementary school in Bahrain. So the ones of you that know Bahrain, it was at that time called the American Mission School, now called the Raja. Was a pretty good school, very progressive for its time. And I went through the educational system there. I was still a very shy kid, so it was kind of surprising that in 1 year, in our report card, we used to be graded for both education as well as behavior. And when I was I think in 3rd grade or 2nd grade, the teachers put my behavior as average, which is really, means that you're really a naughty kid. And I wasn't. And I was, my parents were wondering, well, why is that? So they met with the teachers, and the teacher said that Samer basically doesn't pay attention. He sits in the class and he just doesn't pay attention to what we're saying. And what I said to the teacher, well, what is it that you think I didn't say? And I repeat, and she asked me, well, what did I talk about today? And I repeated to her exactly what she talked about. So just the fact that I wasn't looking at her or engaging with her and I was tinkering didn't really mean that I wasn't absorbing information. But that's why it's important, maybe, why I mentioned this story is that from a school system point of view, it's important that the teachers are able to deal with a variety of personalities and to not judge you based on a traditional measurement of what you do. So I was actually quite a good student. I went through the American Mission School. It was a great education. We learned English was a very, very strong program. Religion was an interestingly good program. So we used to go to church on Sundays, and we used to have Islamic education the rest of the week. So, grew up to be quite, I think, cultured. My parents used to travel with us a lot. And then I think my parents were one of the most unreasonable thinkers that I know, because I graduated reasonably early. I was the age of 14 when I graduated, and I wanted to go to college. And any parent in his right mind wouldn't really send you off in that time and age. Because remember, this is like many years ago, more than most of you were born. So at that point of time, there was no internet. International calls were very expensive. And so when you go away, it was going to be quite a big thing. So at that age, they allowed me to go to the US. And that was like quite a far, completely different continent. So that was a good decision. I went to the US, kind of cut off from home, and continued my interest to tinker, to explore, to play with things, to try to invent things or figure out how things work. And went on and got a degree in electrical engineering, graduated. I enjoyed the university. It was a good university, one of the best in the US for engineering of its time. And graduated, went on, and I said that at that point of time I wasn't really satisfied. I still wanted to play some more. So it wasn't that I wanted to get a degree, it's just that I just didn't get enough. My mother keeps telling me even today, you don't play enough as a kid, it seems, so you always want to do things. So I did. So I went on to, I transferred to another school, to Princeton University, and I spent a couple of years. I did 2 master's degree, again in electrical engineering and in information technology. And after that, I still wanted to play some more. So I continued on for another 3 years and did my PhD in experimental solid-state physics. So in this program, I was in a lab, and that was really like heaven for me. So I had lots of things to play with, almost complete freedom of what to do, and to produce really important research. Was good applied research. Published a lot, So during those 5 years, published over 60 publications. Our professor was also very progressive. Unlike a lot of professors which are controlling, he actually allowed his students to go to lots of conferences. So our reward for writing a good piece of research was to go to a conference. So he would send us to New Orleans, to San Francisco, Los Angeles, experienced a few earthquakes during those visits, went on lots of road trips, and really had a great time. So learning wasn't a chore, it was actually part of this will to tinker, to play, and to learn. It's something that I think is ingrained in you as a young kid, and you get old when you stop having that interest, I believe. So graduated, I was about 23, I think, when I graduated, and I went on to Germany. What took me there was actually doing a postdoctoral research. I applied to a program by the German government. It was the Humboldt Foundation. It's a big foundation that's controlled by the presidency in the German Republic. And they have a program where a number of scholarships are given to leading scholars and professors globally to bring people into Germany. We learn German and we do research at any institution of our choosing in Germany. So I was accepted into the program and decided to go to Stuttgart, to the Max Planck Institute in Stuttgart on solid state physics, and was extremely lucky to have a great institution, a great set of international researchers and staff, and spent a couple of years there playing some more. So did some more research in solid state physics. I published. I met my academic aspirations, which is to publish in the top journal of my field at the time. It was called Physical Review Letters, so I had 2 publications into that. That's like the pinnacle of our field, to be published in that magazine, but also had a lot of fun. So while I was studying the properties of semiconductors for photovoltaic applications, I was also playing. So in one of the weekends, I had a Polish friend, and we decided, hey, why don't we go and have some fun in the lab? So we went in and did an experiment and published a paper in the American Journal of Physics on why does boiling water in a kettle create sound? So something totally immaterial, was just a piece of fun. And that happened to be quite an important publication, was chosen by the editor like 10 years ago to be one of his favorite publications during his career as an editor of the publication. So it's important that you have fun, that whenever you have an idea, you keep creating it and just keep playing, keep following it up until you just can't anymore. So when I finished my work in Germany a couple of years, so now I've been out of Bahrain for almost 11 years. So really from the age of 14 till the age of 25, I was outside of Bahrain. In effect, I grew up the majority of my transformative years outside of Bahrain. But I very much wanted to come back, did come back. I worked initially with the late His Excellency Yusuf al-Shirawi. He was a great teacher, a great mentor, and he really pulled me in. He said, Samer, I want you to be with me, and I would like you to just work with me as an advisor. So I said, yes, fine. But I said, look, it's going to be boring for me. I came from that big educational background. I'd like to do more. So he went on and said, well, if you'd like to also work in the university part-time, you can do that. And that was kind of unique. So I had a great mentor. So as you see, I've had great parents, I had great teachers, I had great schools, I had a great mentor here. And I went on and I did 2 years in Bahrain University teaching in the School of Engineering, the School of Physics, had a lot of fun doing that, did some research, but I reached a level at the university where there really wasn't a lot to do because of the caliber of research that was done here was good, but limited by availability to students, to graduate students, to various equipment, and to funding. So during this time, I was also going in and seeing the family business, which was a company at that time called Bahrain Fiberglass. And it was a small, but one of the first leading firms in Bahrain. Was established in 1975, one of the first industries that was set up in Mina Salman. And I liked what they were doing. I was really intrigued by the possibilities of what they're working with. They're working with fiberglass, which is a material that has nothing to do with electronics or semiconductors or what have you. But they were creating some interesting products, and what you could create with composites really fascinated me and interested me. So after 2 years of working in government and university, I left and I joined BFG International and started that journey. So my first entry was in '92. One of the first things that I had on my plate at the time was the development of our export market in Japan. And that's an interesting story. So typically Japan was at that time a big exporter, wasn't really a big importer. And I pushed very hard as soon as I came in is to try to develop, to work with our Japanese supplier of raw materials. We said, look, you supply some material, why don't you buy finished goods from BFG into the Japanese market? And they were kind of reluctant to do this, but we kept persevering. And in a year or two, but in the year '93, BFG became the largest exporter out of Bahrain, the largest exporter of fiberglass finished products into the Japanese market. So a small island nation supplying to Japan. So that was a fantastic achievement. And then my love of design and product build extended into boats. At that time, the Gulf had a real renaissance in recreational boating. So we created a big range of marine craft under the name of Voyager Marine. It was the top of its field. They were and in 1996, there was this big crisis, financial crisis. Oil went to $10 from about $40, and the economy just stalled. Everything stopped. Recreational boating was no more. Government spending on infrastructure was no more. And BFG came into very difficult times because all of a sudden its sources of projects were coming to an end. At that point of time, I made a decision to go forward, and it was a key strategic decision saying we must immediately stop dependence on the local market or the regional market, and we have to go and expand globally. So I had this idea of basically two regions, selecting two relatively nearby regions, Europe, Asia, and we set up two marketing offices, one in Europe, one in Asia, with just one or two staff in these companies. So it wasn't a very huge investment, but it was a big leap to say we do want to go out there. And we started this in 1996, and by 19 lunches and dinners, Things water treatment was an interesting story. Could spend an hour talking about that experience. And then in France, we signed a contract with Alstom to supply parts for trains. Now, a company in Bahrain aspiring to make train components for trains in Europe is something most people wouldn't think about. But we recognized it as an interesting opportunity, and we challenged it. We said, why not? Why don't we do it? At that point of time, none of the European train builders were buying anything outside of Europe. The French were buying from France, Germany, maybe Spain. The Germans were buying mainly from Germany, and East Europe was still not on their radar. Of course, China and India as exporters were not present at the time. So when I won the first contract in 1999 with Alstom Transport, we were the only non-European amongst 14 competitors for the contract. And we won our first contract because we gave them a technologically disruptive solution. We actually gave them a product which was 40% lighter than any of our competitors and 40% cheaper than, therefore, as a result of the material reduction, than any of our competitors. So our win into that market was not done by pricing alone, but it was done because the technical solution was fantastic. Pulling forward from 1999 to 2006, out of our 14 competitors, Less than 5 or 6 remained, and a couple of years later, there were only 2. Today, only 1 survives amongst those 14. And we became the dominant supplier to the European market for the train commodities that we were working with. Of course, we have other product lines that we are working with, and I thought I'd just run you through some pictures of some of the things that we have done and maybe talk about the journey along the way. So today, BFG, where it stands, we are, I wouldn't call us a large company. We are actually, I call ourselves a small multinational. That is headquartered in Bahrain. Technology is developed out of Bahrain. Knowledge and know-how is developed out of Bahrain. But we have manufacturing facilities throughout the globe. There's a factory in China, which is not shown on that map for some reason. And then we're in the Philippines, we're in India, we're in France, we have a facility in Barcelona, we're in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and we're in Brazil. South of Brazil. These are all manufacturing facilities that manufacture products. And the product range is quite diversified. So we work in architecture, infrastructure, rail, leisure, industrial, wind energy, and you'll see some pictures of what we do. So the key strategies for success, coming from a very small market in a very small country, in a kind of limited area in Bahrain, Al-Fatih Mosque, is one of our projects. This predates me, so I take no credit for this. This was done in 1984. When it was built, it was one of the largest fiberglass architectural structures ever built in the world. It's a 25-meter dome. Some of you may have gone to Al Bayan School. So Al Bayan School is done in 1982. It's composed of 8 buildings, and it's completely enveloped with composite solutions. This is one of the oldest fiberglass building envelopes that still exist in the world today. We did not only work locally, but we supplied projects all over the world. We supplied projects in Singapore. We supplied projects in the Netherlands. This is a facade that BFG made about 9 or 10 years ago for the University of Netherlands, the medical school. These parts here are for a sports stadium in Basra. These panels were manufactured in Bahrain. They were split in half. Each one of them is about the size of this hall. So these are huge. And these were basically split down the middle. We put them on trailers, transported them to Kuwait, and then on Kuwait they went by ferry to Basra, to the site. The site is very close to the seaside. They were assembled and put together. This is a project that has just recently been commissioned. It's one of the stations for the high-speed train in Saudi that runs from Mecca to Al-Madinah. So part of the Haramein project, and we supplied the complete ceiling roofing system. Each triangle there is 27 meters. So it's even bigger than this hall, just each triangle. This is another project that was done in Saudi for the King Abdullah Economic District. And we kept challenging, and all of these projects, they're very difficult. Very few people could do them. It took a lot of research, a lot of thinking, a lot of innovation, home-built here in Bahrain, trying to see how we can develop them. This is a great example. These are panels that are in the Avenues Mall in Kuwait. If any of you go to Kuwait, Avenues Mall, this is the most recent expansion. These panels are 27 meters across, so they're huge, massive. And the architect came in and said, look, we would like to have this fantastic three-dimensional shape, and we want it to be light, but we want it to be in a perfect chrome finish with no joints seen. Now, that was like impossible. If you could do it in metal, it would be extremely heavy and extremely expensive. And you'd basically have to weld sheets, bend them, and then in 3D shapes, and then polish them for about a year or two. So that was out of the question. They thought of putting films on a kind of a frame, and that didn't work because any reflective film, when you bend it, it becomes distortion. You have distortive effects. So that didn't work. So we actually said, we took on the challenge and we said, well, why can't we build it out of a composite part, which you can easily build in 3D, but how can we achieve a chrome finish? Now, you can't just put it into a chroming bath because it's non-conductive, and you don't have chroming baths that are that big. So we invested in research and we looked globally for technology partners, and we developed a solution in-house to make coating for architectural claddings, and we delivered it. So that's something that's quite unique, and it's a capability that is unique to BFG. We've done other projects. This is Al Khalifiya, a project in Harag. We had a big contract 2 to 3 years ago to supply the complete station envelopes for the Doha Metro, massive project where our job was to design the parts, supply them, install them. Wasn't specified in fiberglass, but it became fiberglass. We worked with our client and convinced them. We've done a big project in the UK. This is a tunnel. This is the biggest tunnel underwater in the UK, outside of the Channel Tunnel, almost 3 kilometers long in Liverpool. It was interesting. This is one of the tunnels where one of the Harry Potter movies was shot. So there were some scenes taken in this tunnel. It's claimed to fame. And it's not made out of fiberglass, it's made out of steel. So the reason we won this project is because our technical proposal for engineering and project management was graded twice as high as any of our competitors in the UK. This is the project that first started our work in Asia, in Singapore, in 1999. Each one of these panels there is, again, 20 meters free span. So that's an architecture. We also work in wind energy, so we supply wind energy markets in Japan. So we're one of the biggest suppliers to the Japanese market for these wind generator housings. These carry the weight of the turbine, the generator, so they're extremely massive weight-bearing structures, and they run between 12 meters to as far as 18 meters in length. So we're a strategic supplier to this market with Hitachi, with Siemens. We've supplied massive numbers of these in the Indian market for Siemens Gamesa. We also are a strategic supplier to GE. We have about 70% of the market in Brazil for GE's wind energy turbines. In the US, we had a brief experiment in the US. Wasn't our most successful experiment. So incredible number of failures along the way. Here you see the successes. I could probably spend twice as long showing you the failures. Both come together, a lot of learning. In the US, we built these parts for buses, front ends, rear ends, complete roof. All of this is structural in fiberglass. And these are the top range of the Volvo bus range in the US. They were like electric buses, environmentally friendly buses, using the latest technologies. We set up a facility that started when Volvo opened their plant, and we closed it down when Volvo shut down their plant. And what we did is we put that business onto a freeze. We still see the US market as extremely vital and important. We have a lot of requests to re-enter the market, but we've parked this temporarily till we get the bandwidth to restart the operation. And then I show you what we do in the rail market. So in the rail market, we got into 3 product ranges. We didn't choose the simplest product range. We chose one of the top 3 most critical parts in a train, and that's a toilet cabin for the train. And the toilet cabins for trains are an extremely sophisticated product. When you look at the back of one of these, I don't have a picture here, the amount of electronics, pneumatics, control systems is massive. These are 10 times more sophisticated than anything that would go inside an airplane, for example. And invite you to come and visit us. These are built in Bahrain. We welcome visitors. You can come and actually see these being built. We started building these for the European rail market. They're an extremely critical part, not because they're very difficult to engineer and build, but because of the reliability requirements. If one of these things breaks down, there's a penalty of 250,000 euros per day to the operator that they pay as a fine for the train not being able to run. So it's a very critical commodity, and you have to have a really strong degree of engineering competence in order to build this. So today we are the world's leading supplier of this product commodity globally. We've supplied markets all over the world. I'll show you just a very few of the projects. The previous one was 250 trains in France. If you ever go on London, on the Virgin trains between London, Manchester, Birmingham, all the toilet cabins were built here in Bahrain. If you go on Germany, on any of the regional trains, we have about 50% of the German market. So it's half and half that you have the toilet that you would be using is built in Bahrain. These are still today being built in Bahrain. We also have the Chinese market. For the Chinese market, because of local requirements, these were actually developed in Bahrain, and then we transferred the know-how to China, and we built them in our Chinese facility. This is a project that's in the UK. This is the line that goes from, I just was on this train, London to Bristol. Very nice trains, very beautiful cabins, built for Hitachi, and they assemble those in their UK facilities. Another project in the UK. We are the biggest supplier for the TGV, the high-speed French train. In addition to toilet cabins, we also build the front ends of the train. So this is the big structural part that sits in front of the train. And we've supplied that all over the world. There are a few projects. This one is a tram in Brazil. This is a TGV, so that big whole nose is built in one of our facilities, was previously built in France, is now transferring to Bahrain in another month or so. We also did the Singapore Metro, Paris Metro, all the sidewalls and the front end, so interiors. Monorail, this one is in Sao Paulo and in Riyadh. And Sydney. The Australian market is actually a very big market for us. So this is one of the biggest projects in Australia. This is the Sydney-Waratah. It's a commuter train, double deck. We built the structural parts that actually carry the whole weight of the second level and composed as well of the steering, all the sidewalls, and a lot of the cab interiors. And in South Africa, we had the contract and still have the contract to build 600 trains, complete interior, so that includes sidewalls, seatings, front ends, and a few of them their toilet cabins. So with this project, we set up our South African JV just recently. So what you see is that, yes, here, we in Bahrain, we could go develop innovative products. And it's important to just keep your eyes on what the market needs. Don't confine your vision locally, and don't confine your vision to, or your aspirations to things that you see around you. If you have an idea, you have thinking, do open up your eyes, consider the globe to be your market, and chase your dream, move forward with it. I've met a lot of innovators before I move into the conclusion here. Met a lot of innovators through my career and had the pleasure to work with them. One of them was a great man in our industry. His name was Gilbert Chomera. And he's one of the grandfathers in our industry. He had invented a brand new type of material that transformed our industry. When I met him, he had retired from his previous firm, but he had this amazing idea for a new product. And I told him, Gilbert, why don't you come and set it up in Bahrain? And it took about a year of convincing, but finally he did come up. He set it up in Bahrain. And we formed a joint venture with him. Today, it's a wholly owned part of BFG. Group, and it's called Ilium. It's in the head, the Bahrain Investment Park. And it's a beautiful factory, very modern. It produces products that it exports today mainly to the North American market, to the Canadian market, and, as well as some production to the rest of the world. It's a fast-growing company, very innovative technology, so something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So again, it puts Bahrain's name high on consumers' minds in industrial space. Another great inventor I met very recently is my good friend Max. Can you stand up, Max? Someone stand up. So here's Max. So I threatened to have him come and talk, but he's very shy. So Max is a great guy. He's a great inventor. He could build anything. And he has done a lot of things in his career. I think he'd be a great speaker here sometime. And he is now working to develop a project in Bahrain to build sport composites using advanced carbon fibers, as well as advanced metalworking technology. So he produces the world's premier spear guns for deep sea fishing. He makes fins for diving that have patented technologies, and something that's very interesting. So we're very delighted also to work with Max. And we keep looking. So in terms of innovation, it's something that should never stop. You can just never stop. People catch up to you. So the people always ask, well, what do? You can put as many patents as you want, but that just doesn't stop people. The key is to keep continuing, to keep getting ahead of everybody else. So in innovation space, we continue to develop. We have a number of patents in the rail sector for, I won't go through these, but for example, lightweight handles, antibacterial, Fencor, which is like a very lightweight material, and ballistic front ends. These are actually fronts for trains which can deflect a bullet from a high-speed rifle. You might ask, why does a train builder want to deflect bullets from a high-speed rifle? This is actually for the Australian market, because people actually take bricks and drop them from the top of a bridge into a fast train in Australia. And so it's important to protect the drivers by making ballistic front ends. So these are technologies we researched and developed here. And to conclude, I think one of the most interesting technologies we've been working with is on wastewater treatment. We're developing one of the world's most interesting micro wastewater treatment solutions. You know, when you have water in a city, wastewater goes into a municipal plant or a communal plant, and it gets processed in order to provide water, which normally gets put out into the sea, or in the case of Bahrain, it goes towards agriculture. That's great. You could do it at that scale. The question is that if you look at the planet, 50% of the population of the planet has no access to any kind of sanitation. Can you imagine that? And the amount of disease that is generated by this is massive. In country of Ethiopia, 70% of the population of young kids have stunted growth, meaning that beyond the age of 6 years old, their mental capability does not develop any further. That's brought about by parasites that live in waste that children get infected with. Therefore, there is a big humanitarian need for what is called off-grid sanitation. That means individual sanitation, one cleaning solution for every home. There is also, of course, a big problem globally. South Africa as an example, in Cape Town, for example, water shortages, water scarcity, or you go into desert communities. So when somebody uses a toilet, you are actually generating water. You're not consuming water. And so the question is, can you recycle that water? Can we protect that valuable commodities? So what we've done is we've actually looked at this issue. We've started tackling it. We've set up a research plant in Strasbourg. The reason we went to Strasbourg is because it was a great location to have access to academic talent, to university talent. And we set up a facility there. We've developed a prototype system. We're about to deploy that prototype system. We're actually looking at early adopters today. Globally, we have started speaking with a number of finance partners as well as early deployment partners. Now, these individual water treatment plants, they're very small. They're going to be this wide, this long, this high, use very little energy, very innovative technologies, and they will go into a big range of applications. And so what we're developing is a complete system between a cabin, the treatment system, and the vacuum toilets that actually need to work in. So you have all the three systems, and we're looking at the cabin of the future, the treatment of the future, and the toilet of the future. The R&D is split between our French facility and our Bahrain facility. And we are working with a large number of technology collaborators. There are actually quite a few more now on this column. And we have a number of early adopters and interested parties into this. This is potentially a massive business opportunity. If this premise plays out, this could be the new product range. So when you're talking about disruption, it's important to keep looking for something new. We believe this is one of the technologies of the future. There are many other areas we're looking at. I had the pleasure to speak last week at the Fourth Industrial Revolution Forum in Bahrain on our Industry 4.0 program, in which we utilize artificial intelligence, machine learning, additive printing, advanced robotics, advanced imaging in manufacturing systems and try to create bespoke software and technologies. So that's something that is also something that we are looking at as part of our development program. So we are looking for talent. I'll use this as a pitch here. We are looking for talent. I see a lot of young people. We have strong ambitions, and I think it can only be grown with a lot of unreasonable thinkers, young unreasonable thinkers. And so we welcome you to visit us, contact us, and come with us on this journey. Thank you very much.
Samir, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we won't be able to sit down together. But I have one question, which we'll tackle while we're standing up. You said in 1999 you developed a revolutionary product, and it sort of changed, and the customers in France started being interested. How important is R&D? Tell us about R&D. How important is it? What is your message to executives and others about R&D?
I've learned about R&D, interestingly. I always liked to play games. Not computer games, but just games. So the only management course I ever took in life was called Introduction to Management in my undergrad years. And that was such a nice course because we played a game. And in the game, we ran these mock companies, and we competed in teams, and we would get the results of where we were in the market. And at the end of the semester, our final exam was a presentation to the board, in which case it was the professor. And the professor basically criticized me at that time and says, you know, that was great, you did well, but you didn't, why did you spend only this much on R&D? And I didn't really have an answer. And he says, there are two things that I took out of that course. He says, you didn't spend enough on marketing and you didn't spend enough on R&D. And I took that forward in life, and I considered it, took the words on, and that's been a key part of my DNA, is you must spend money on product development. Stop worrying about your competitor. Stop worrying, to the executives here. A lot of executives here worry about market protection. Can we get some kind of price protection, tariff protection? Can the government buy more from us? All of this is very temporary. You've got to have a great product, and you've got to have an innovative product. So you must spend this reasonable part of your budget onto continuous R&D product development, or you'll be disrupted.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But you've also got to know how to use it. So unlike Kodak, when they invented the digital camera, they didn't use it. They were making so much money off their traditional film.
1976 they invented it, believe it or not,
Xerox.
We are so proud of you as a Bahraini industrialist. Really, what you've achieved for Bahrain, and seeing that a small country can produce all this, we are so proud of you. Can we all give a big hand to...
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. عندنا درع صغير لك. حياك دكتور سامح.
شكرا. Thank you.
هو مصور يبينا with this background عشان thank you so much. Thank you. We are on to our last, but certainly not least, unreasonable thinker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jem Tariq. Jem is the managing director of Unilever Gulf. In his 22-year career at Unilever, considered one of the world's best management schools, he has experienced and implemented numerous different styles of management, leadership, and coaching. He is an expert in supply chain and human resources management and has been spearheading the Unilever brand of innovation in the Gulf. Can we all please welcome Mr. Jem Falak. Pleasure to have you. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, or should I say good evening. I know it's quite a challenging time now to listen to me after so many nice speakers and towards the end of the sessions. I know it will be quite challenging again to get some focus. That's why I will try to make it light. Don't worry, I will not go very deep and detailed stuff. As seen over here, I will talk about the navigating the future. So mainly more than the company, I will talk about the future. Because when I was invited over here, I believe that there are startups, young people, who will shape the future. Therefore, for that future, we need to do something altogether. That's why mainly I would like to talk about the future. Considering there is so committed group left at this hour here compared to the morning, then I get the liberty to dream about the future with you more than being very serious. Because I may talk about some technology stuff, you will see there are some technology as well, but more than that one, I would like to go through all these researches and new things and what may be future. That's why I will ask the questions over here together with you and we will try to dream together. That is the main idea. I will not talk about today, okay? Because when you look at today, today is past. In fact, future is today. Therefore, we need to think about future in that way. So, for that, I will start with just looking at the playing ground to the world. It's not a technology stuff only. I will look all the aspects of the future. I will try to talk about them. As we all know that, generally, there are so many things coming into the life, and we are facing with some different kind of things. At one side, we are talking very nice stuff in the technology, with the great developments, improvements that gives quite a nice view and comfort to the human life. But on the other side, there are so many people having difficulties, wars, hunger, poverty. Therefore, that is the future as well. Future is not only your mobile. Future is a 360 holistic stuff. You need to look future from all the aspects because especially young group, the startup shapers will leave that feature. That's why we need to look for all. Now, let's look at the world in this case, the playing ground with few charts only. Yeah, it will be very crowded. Currently, this is the figure only this year in 2 months, that perspective. Because when we talk about population, it doesn't mean anything at the end with some figures. But that's a big country will be added at the end of the year to the world population. So it will be a crowded world. Yeah, we are all connected. In the morning sessions and at the other sessions, we have seen many data like that. Data depends on which statistics you are getting on. Sometimes it may be 500, sometimes 600, but there is a huge connection. And we all know that one because we are connected somehow. And the problem over here, when you look at all this information, we are all overloaded with the information. Data. Yes, we are saying data is the king now, but how to use that data is the most crucial problem or thing that we need to understand and use. Another one is the world is in need of the solutions. When we talk about all this good stuff and improvements in the world, we forget something. We are human. Especially young guys in startups. You are human. That's why you should not forget about that one, because there are things we need to solve in that way as well. If you look at this figure, 1.3 million children. 1.3 million children, guys. So there is something we may do for this future together. It's not only about earning money, but it's something about doing something for the human. The figure is 2 million, in fact, if you look at some preventable diseases as a reason of the death. On the other side, you see, this is the US dollar, again from statistics. daily amount is $5 billion nearly for military expenditures, although UN calculates United Nations is around 265 billion per year is needed to stop the hunger. So there is something we need to fix in the world as people who will shape the future. Another one is there is an imbalance. Some people hungry, some people obese. When you look at the world is 1.6 billion people overweight, and on the other side, this is the figure daily, guys, 30,000 deaths because of the hunger. Just compare what's going on. And look at the figure, $200 million for overweight programs, just daily. So there's something, again, we need to do for the future, to have a better future for everybody. And we have a world careless. Around 900 million people have problem to reach the water, which is the core of the life. On the other side, you see the figures, forests, chemicals, toxins, all those are on the environment, which feeds us. At the end, this is our planet, this is our future. You need something to breathe or drink for your future, to live. So this is the playing ground. I don't want to go too much, but at the end, what we may say that, yes, it's a kind of age of choices, prioritization, depending on your priority in this playing ground, and many contradictions, as we have seen. Then, for that kind of a thing, we all know that change is there. Now, when we look at the change, this is not something new. Before Jesus, I think around 400,000 years, there are some Greek philosophers say the only thing doesn't change is change itself. So coming over here to a very smart audience saying change is important, guys, is very stupid. But the point is over here is something different. We have a different phase of the change. In past, we were talking about the speed of the change. Then we start to talk about the acceleration of the change, because the speed just moved a bit more and accelerated change. And we are talking about jerk. Jerk is not a slang word. Jerk is the speed of acceleration. Being a physicist over here, I think you know the word. Therefore, generally we use jerk as a kind of slang word, but it's not. Speed, acceleration, and now the jerk of change. So fast, so unexpected somehow. So, what is the main dynamics of the change? You listened a lot about the digitization. That's why I will not go what it means. You listened a lot about the disruptiveness. But for disruptiveness, my understanding is about the numbers. Because when we talk about the disruptions, generally it's a bit difficult how disruptive it is. Yes, business models, etc. But generally I use a figure, 10. If you do something 10 times faster, 10 times cheaper, 10 times efficient, then you are disruptive. If you are below 10 times, you are not disruptive. If you are doing 50%, 60%, 70%, that's just improvement. It's not a disruption. When you come to the dematerializing, think about your phones. I think that's the best example. Many materials, many items just were eliminated by phones. You don't have your camera anymore, you don't have notebooks, you don't have, I don't know, your fax, or you don't have your compass, you don't use watch. That's bringing and consolidating the things. And that change brings that kind of a dematerialization. Demonetization is another item. Everybody is talking about Uber, Airbnb, etc., especially for this kind of speeches. They are the main items showing, oh my God, they don't have hotels, but they have sold 50 billion business with the cap, stock market cap. Yes, but the important thing is how they demonetize the things, how they eliminate the things. Not only Uber, but there are many other kind of examples. And the last one is the most critical one for the startups. Democratization. In past, especially companies like us, had the opportunity to reach all the markets, had the opportunity to reach R&D, had the opportunity to reach the budgets, universities, research centers, etc. And after that, having the opportunity to work with the countries, making business over there, because you had the dominance, or you had the enough budgets to work that one. But now, all the information is democratized, because whatever you want to reach, you reach through the internet, through the doctoral thesis, through the university libraries. Everything's available, probably except some special military projects. That's a democracy of the information, knowledge. The second one, especially for the startups, you have the opportunity to reach every country. Because if you have a very good product or service, either through an Instagram account or through another media, you can reach somebody in Indonesia, somebody in Canada, somebody in Paraguay. So that's the democratization of the trade and making business. That is the opportunity for the startups. So let's look at what are the trends in this world in this case, since there are so big changes. I will not go to the details, but as you see, some of them I will talk about during the charts. Only thing I want to talk about this one, East and South. But when you look at the East, that's the future potential. Because if you look at the figures, Africa, for example, currently Spain, around 58 million population. And if you look at Tanzania, it's around 50, 57. In 2050, Tanzania will be 138, and Spain will be still 47 million. 1/3 of the world population will be Africa in 2050. Of course, those are the calculations, estimations. There may be changes, but there is a big stuff. In this case, we should not forget about the South. It's not only Africa. It's the same with the Latin America. One of the big countries that will have high populations are Nigeria, Congo, Ethiopia, in Latin America in the same way. Because the birth rate is different in these countries. In Europe is 1.4, in this country is still 5.2. So therefore, the economy and the markets will be there for the startups. What are the main pillars shaping this future? We call it green. Genomics, robotics, informatics, and nano and biotechnologies. When you look at the green, you may say that this is just technology, science, or just about the research and development kind. No, because they are shaping the future, they are shaping the technology, because we use technology altogether, but there's a big computational power, because to do all this stuff you can do at the moment with your computers, notebooks, telephones, mobiles, whatever, you need that computational power. And we know quite a lot. We came from a very big computers on our systems instead of even the personal computer from the main frames. First to the desktops, and now notebooks, and now we are going all these variables. That's the computational power. This is the one last 2 weeks ago, just shown by IBM in CES, the quantum computer. And that quantum computer is claimed to have 20 qubit capacity. 20 qubit, it doesn't mean anything if you are not in the subject. But just to give you the idea, some calculation says that if you have 100 qubit, then you may cover all the computers currently available from the computational power point of view. Why it's important? Because currently there are some conventional computers, some work on the conventional computers to get the power of exascale powers, it's called exascale powers, 10 to power of 18, but quantum computers may go to 10 to power of 1,000. So think about all this computational power. And it starts to come. Currently, it's not something you can buy because it works through the cloud, but the first customers are Exxon and also CERN, the Switzerland center for this computer. So they are coming because at the end, the computational power that we need in the world is getting higher and higher with all the things that we need with all these data worlds to get, use, and create something through this data. This is 2 weeks ago, I think from Colorado University, as far as I remember. It's something called quantum computer. It's an isotope of carbon-13, just one atom, single carbon molecule, sorry, not atom, single carbon molecule with the states of the spins for the engineers. It may even serve 60 qubit quantum computer. So 1 carbon, and we are talking about 60 qubit. I told you 100 qubit may cover all the computational power and available at the moment. There is something over there. Let's not go into the more detail because it's more technical probably, but there is something over there coming with a very high computational power. And there are some other kind of things as well. Currently they are working on how to store the data to the DNA, because all the store or data storage mediums are generally prone to be destroyed. Think about your CDs, think about your USBs. DNA is something you can create all this stuff. And generally, they talk about, again, the sizes are so big, you may keep all the data available at the moment in a spoon of DNA. Now let's dream, because I promised you to dream. Let's dream. Think about your brains. You have that kind of a DNA data available in the world, stored in your DNAs, and you have a computational power, like the quantum computers, just modified your brain. What you can do? Think about that one. Do you need universities? Do you need lessons? Do you need all other stuff? No, because everything may be over there. I'm not talking about a dream, guys, because whatever in the science fiction in the past, it became science facts. Probably it will not be in the way I mentioned, but in some other way. So there is a question with that one. If everybody knows everything and can do that kind of a thing with that kind of a power, what is your difference? The question is mainly for the startups, not for me, because that's your life in the future. What's the difference? How you can differentiate when everybody knows everything? I will talk about it. If you wonder the answer, you need to stay a bit in the hall without leaving. So there are good things that we are discussing, another technological part. We are talking about the 3D, as you know, 3D printings, etc. And it's one of the things. 3D is something in the past at the moment because it's commercial. Now we are talking about the 4D. 4D is after printing, having or changing the shape depending on the external conditions, temperature, moisture, whatever. Now, for startups, for young guys in this hall, the question is 4D? No, because I am talking about 4D, guys. Sorry, it's over. Because if I am talking, there are other people working on that one as well. Your concept should be 5D. You should think about what should be the 5th dimension. What is it? How I can create something called 5th dimension or 6th dimension, whatever. That is the feature. That is how to shape the feature. If you copy 3D, if you copy 4D, sorry, you are still living in the past or current. And of course, when you say 3 or 4D, there are people working. This is something called, on the left, utility folks, or you folks. They are micro-level robotics. They are doing 1, 2, 3, 4 functions like the cells in the human body. And similarly, there is another one called Clytronics. Same concept, micro robots. So think about that one. It's like the human body now. Your chairs, if it's composed from this material, it can make every kind of thing, like your body, or your car, or your plane, or your food, whatever. At the end, all this stuff may come in, and through that, you may shape the world with a very intelligent materials. When I say intelligent materials, the end of the dream is sky. because you can imagine what you can do with a, intelligent material or item having micro robots all over the composites. Dream? Yes, dream. But that is something you need to think about. You need to dream. Yes, we talk about the connections, and from morning on you have seen many connection examples. Millions, trillions, there are so many numbers. Let's think about something. When you think about personal, what may happen? Especially for the startups again. Now I try to come back to a business idea. If you have connection with your body, with some variables, about your body analysis, and all these connections are done through your agenda, your meeting programs, travel programs, etc., etc. Let's assume in the morning you try to wake up. And that kind of a system can easily check your agenda, when you have a meeting, when you need to go to your office, what is the road conditions, and is there any congestion or not. Accordingly, he may make the plan to wake up, and meanwhile, checking with your bad analysis, it may say that you need to eat a green apple because your potassium level is so low, but I checked the refrigerator, there is no green apple. I checked the supermarket, they don't have, but I checked they have a delivery coming in 10 minutes. Therefore, I ordered that one, I paid that one, and it comes with that one. Now, 7:58, you need to wake up. This is a very short stuff. That is the dream, because if you go more and more, you may be sure the story may be bigger. And then we may come to all these figures that mentioned from morning on, millions, billions connections. We will talk about the other parts, privacy and the human part of all this stuff. Currently, we are talking about only on the technology. Yes, we are growing the limbs, all these kind of things, either with the 3Ds or with the lab methods. And there is another one again coming with the biotechnology. We have the chance to play with the DNA. This is from a project called Sleeping Beauty, the cat. As you see, it has a fluorescent attribute because a gene just patched to its DNA, taken from jellyfish for a HIV test, because they had the HIV gene transferred to the cat to make the work on that one, but for indicator, they use this fluorescent gene as well. Therefore, they see whether they can move or not. Now, let's dream. If we can do it between the animals, plants, etc., etc., think about the human. If we start to use those kind of interspecies gene transfers, what maybe? Would you like to be resistant to the radiation like a crotch? Probably. Or try to jump like a grasshopper with the different kind of, muscle preparations. Think about all this stuff. Would you like to smell like a dog? Yes. Then you will. So you don't need probably that one, because already you will get those kind of senses open that can go with your life. So this is one of the things that may change your life in the same way. And we know that there are 3 parents with all these DNAs. Why I'm talking about all this? Because when we come to all these kind of things, as mentioned before as well, we have the chance to start to design the people. Because if you know what is going on with all these DNA genes, you may start to play. And you may ask, I don't know, a kid with blue eyes and dark hair. But after a while, probably you may need some designers for that. Because when you go to design for your house, sometimes you say that, yeah, there should be a professional, which color, which style, etc. Then probably, our money needs to go with a baby designer section with that kind of a thing. Now we need to try to think about what are the risks of all this. because suddenly we start to design the things. We start to design a humanity with resistant to all this stuff, probably sleeping less, immune to many diseases, etc. We are coming to a superhuman kind of thing. Now, who will be the superhuman? Probably the persons or the people or the societies investing all this stuff. Then suddenly the gap is getting bigger between that one. Another part for this human, yeah, we have the machine-brain interface is working at the moment. So we are getting all the data to machines. And then there's a question over there. If you can manage to move all your data in your brain to the machines, the question is, who are you? Who is the machine? Thinking and leaving the spirit, soul, all this stuff aside, very materialistically, because you are your memories. Whatever I ask about you is your memories. If I ask your name, it's a memory. If I ask what you like to drink, it's coming through the memories again, because you like the, I don't know, cola, or you like the lemonade, whatever. It comes from the memories and coming as a kind of result, output. Then that's the question. What's going on? Things are starting to get mixed. That's why some people talk about this as either singularity or superintelligence, human and machine together. That will be a different kind of life. Then, you know, we need to think about the human feature. Because if we are so much integrated with all this machine, artificial intelligence stuff, what will happen? What will be the feature? Artificial intelligence is a kind of risk for us or not? Now, yes, when you think about the statistics, it says that till 2035, in Japan 50%, in US 35%, and I think in Germany around 30% of the jobs will go to the artificial intelligence or the machines, let's say. What we will do? What is the difference? Again, that is the question, same question. Startups, listen to me. Same question. How you will create a difference? How you will be differentiated in that kind of a world? This time, against the machines. Last time, it was against the people knowing everything or reaching all this data knowledge, but this time, there's something else. One important thing, yeah, you see one example, I think, for the people interested in, you followed that one. AlphaGo had some victory against human in the Go game, which is one of the difficult games. And we are thinking that they will, artificial intelligence will, but in this case, what will be the difference? One of the difference ways, generally we talk about, is creativity. Because we believe that machine learning is the learning of the patterns. In this case, creativity is one of the important things, that you may create the differentiation. But even in the creativity, your challenge is high, startups and young guys. Because this is one of the works a few years ago, EMI project. This artificial intelligence just created 5,000 Bach chorales that experts cannot differ. Because it's about the patterns again. You are giving the patterns, Bach patterns, and after then it looks for that one and creates 5,000 Bach chorales. Bach, I don't know how many chorales he has. Now in this case, you need to change the things. How to change the things? Which means creativity is not about smartness only. Now you need to be at the genius level. So how to change? Think about the painters if you have this challenge in your life in future. Because if you are making a very classical, naturalistic, paintings, an artificial intelligence may come and do it better. But if you create your style, Picasso, artificial intelligence cannot create that one because it's a change of track, change of format. The only thing it can do, it may learn about it and do the same or better. But if you change the things, then that is the way. That is differentiation. That's the reason we are calling all this unreasonable thinking, because that is out of the framework, that is out of track. The only way to create the differentiation. So that's a big question with all this artificial intelligence thing. Another question I will leave on the table for you, just to check. One of the biggest differentiation for the artificial intelligence for future is consciousness. Because nobody can describe what consciousness is. There are some interesting descriptions like subjective experiences. Subjective experience is not something for artificial intelligence. Therefore, consciousness is something, again, creating the differentiation. So, because of the time, I will not go with the detail. That's a very interesting subject. Just check what the consciousness is and how it can differ. So, the last chart about the science and technology. I know it's boring, therefore I will shift some other subjects, but probably you know all this stuff from CERN. After all these collisions, they created some particles, subatomic particles. Names over there, Higgs boson is the most known one. Why I show this? Because I talk about the technology, science, blah, blah, a lot with the feature indications. But it doesn't only change the science and technology, it changes life as well, even the social sciences. Because from these subparticles, there is a line coming as a learning. Some of these subparticles are existent or non-existent under unknown conditions. What does it mean? If subparticles are not existent under some conditions and they are existent under unknown conditions, you are sometimes existing, sometimes not. And we don't know the conditions for that. So even for human, that's an interesting stuff, because if it's subparticles of the atoms, it's your subparticles as well. Sometimes you're existent, sometimes you're not, under unknown conditions. What does it mean for the social science? If you are interested in the philosophy, the first question of the philosophy says, who I am, or who am I? That's the question we try to solve for centuries. But now the question is going behind. Am I available or not? Am I existent or not? So that's why even philosophy, which is one of the oldest social sciences, need to change, need to look from other perspective. Okay, I think that's enough with the science and technology. I don't want to bore you much, but let's look at the social side of the subjects in the world. The world is quite bipolar world. When we say bipolar, we know that there are individualist and collectivist countries and societies. And it depends the degrees. Some is very individualistic, some are very collectivist. 1 minute? No way. Okay. So guys, I have some more charts. I take the liberty to continue. If you are bored, please don't think that I will feel sorry. You may leave as well if you want, because I want to finish this one. Sorry, I am an unreasonable guy, so I will take out from the frames. But as I said, if you want to leave, please feel free. So, in this world, individualist and collectivist, there's another bipolar stuff. On the left side, with all this Maslow hierarchy of needs, you will see so many things from the Western management policies. But we have something called Pinto. And as you see, there are some other things like good name, honor, etc. And if people say, that's self-realization, you need to work, generally in our societies we are talking about, yeah, but I should have honor, good name as well. So that's a mix. That's the polarization we create artificially. Therefore, we need to think both. I know for all the young guys, the main hierarchy is this one. But at the end, you need to consider about the Pinto as well sometimes. Traditional and modern, we all know that, how it's going on. Household is shrinking. Why I'm putting this part? Because when the household is shrinking, generally you cannot transfer these values or the thinking to your kids, because family is getting smaller and smaller. Women and men, it's a woman world, because better educated, and delaying marriage and children and getting more and more from the, or more involved into the life. And they are acting as agent of change for future. Similarly, youth and aging. when you look at youth and aging, generally we are talking about the millennials and youth, but especially for the startups, if you produce a service or product, think about old guys as well, because money is there, as you see. And similarly, even China, generally we think that, oh my God, they are young, big population, so they are getting older as well. Therefore, we need to consider all this stuff. The problem, you have big competition, because as you see, 50% of the things in 6 countries, as you see over here, and growth come from these countries. Why it's important? Because when you come to haves and have-nots, sorry, yeah. Sorry. Most of these young guys are living in poor countries. They need to work. That's why hard working will come from these countries, from these young groups as a competition. That's the reason you need to create a differentiation with some stuff, because you have a very high competition, because these guys will have higher and higher push to get something. That's why hard work is important one. And as I have said before, there is a big gap between the income of the people. That is risky for your future, because when you look at all this stuff, you will see somewhere over here many, many conflicts in the world. And you see that one. People don't have right conditions, and they are coming up with new requests, and sometimes it turns to be violent. That's why we need to do something for the future of the planet, that people get enough and feel better. Because if you look at these last or recent studies about the economy, there are many newcomers coming from the green economy, sharing economy, conscious capitalism, because at the end, it's slowing down. And people in need of something, this current system doesn't work with that one. Then all these new models, even in the economy, is coming to be discussed. That will be something you may still contribute in the same way. Life is changing in the same way. We are so connected, we talk about. We are living in a kind of, artificial world we started to create. And there are different items that we may discuss at least 1 hour more, but full disclosure, transparency, we talk about the blockchains, etc. This one part of the transparency. Mindful consumerism, again, green economy, we talk about a bit. Self-care, people want to care themselves. There are so many pressure from outside world, then they need some self-care. Similarly, connected empowerment. In the morning, you have seen Alexia, Sirius, all this stuff, and it goes somewhere. All this data is somewhere at the end. Whether you would like to be so much full disclosure, or you would like to get some privacy still, that's something. Yeah, privacy is somehow out of the framework, but there is something. The new technology Avengers, or whatever you call, all these guys needs to be feeling some responsibility. You see so many examples recently. Therefore, we need to push for this responsibility to be taken. Digital realities, so many, artificial, virtual, augmented realities. Human enhancement, we talk about all this stuff, and human enhancement coming with quite a lot of things, sometimes with limbs, sometimes better sense, whatever. And we have the fragmented identities. We are not only Arab or, I don't know, Indian or Muslim or whatever. We have so many fragmented identities looking all over the world. Therefore, we need to look in the same way for your businesses as well. And we would like to escape, because there are so many stress, then we look for some artificial things to go ahead with that one. That's why probably you have so big Netflix, Spotify, etc. kind of things that you are dealing with, because you try to escape from the life. Few charts about the environment, again from the future point of view. That's important for you, because we know there's a reality about the climate. In this climate stuff, if we have an increase of 2 degrees, the agricultural harvest will go 20%. You think, if 20% less agricultural output, what may happen in a world going to 10 billion population? Think about that one. In this case, we need to create some solutions, and you have some roles as startups, how to deal with these issues. That's why I show all this stuff. And there will be so many people still living in these conditions. In 2030, there will be 1.8 billion living in these conditions, in slums. So that's good to talk about technology at the beginning probably, but now we need to think about the realities of the world as well. The last, you know, we designed the babies, we changed everything all over the life. This is the change about that as well. This is a technique called Promeso. Currently they are trying to get the permit for that one. Because if you are buried under the ground, especially if there is underwater, because of the decay of the body, you may just pollute the underwater. So what they do, they put you in the cryptology, which means, you know, they make you freeze, and then they take your liquids, and then they give you like a kind of, you know, humus for your garden in that way. So that is changing as well. Birth is changing, life is changing, that is changing. There's all this change, and this is your life more than me. That's why you need to look for all this stuff. At the end, new world, new attitudes, new habits, new trends, more poverty, more wars, more violence. This is the world that you have. But if we summarize, yeah, there's a growing world with scarce sources and changing society and culture, and end of known economy, as we described, and also there's a multi-connected ever-online technology, knowing everything. That is the future for you. And now, from that, you may create your own stories. We try to create our own story, but before that, I want to show this one. Whatever you do, I think you need to think in this way. Because sometimes we think that as human beings, we are so top of the pyramid of all this planet, all this stuff. We are not. At the end, we are a part of an ecosystem. So you need to think about that one. It's same with your businesses as well. It's same whatever you do. We are part of an ecosystem. We are part of humanity. We are part of a planet. Therefore, we need to think about all this stuff in the same way, how we can create the right future for all of us. As a company, we try to do all this stuff that is called transformational change. 1-2 pages, just, I will go very fast. We just said, okay, we need to address these challenges. We need to go with the social and environmental impacts, and innovations should solve or help to solve all these great challenges. In this case, we said that we need to improve the people, health and well-being, and reduce environmental print and enhance livelihood of the people. For that, we use science, technology, and with our brands, we did different campaigns from hygiene to nutrition to child's and all this stuff. Think about that one. This is important. It's not only on the company. Omo Dirt is Good is trying to give the kids the right to play. Currently, kids get 7-hour screen time, 7 hours a day. Now, you need to get them to connect with that ecosystem. That's why I showed to the echo, because you cannot leave and isolate all this stuff. And with the Dow Girls, for example, we are trying to improve the self-esteem, because we need the future leaders. And future leaders should have self-esteem. Women is in the game now. Therefore, they need to come with that kind of a contribution to the world. Environmentally, we do a lot of things, from energy, water, carbon dioxide, from zero waste companies to sustainable crops, and again, innovations with less plastic, without plastic, all this stuff with the startups like you. And for example, when you look at all this kind of transformation change, we are working with the partners. This is with the agricultural part, but I may show you this one. This is an interesting one. In Gulf, for example, we are running Univer Young Entrepreneurs Award every year for the startups with the ideas. And then we are making mentorship with our business people in the business. In global, we have a Univer Foundry. Univer Foundry invests as an angel investor to the startups, because we want to have a good future for all of us, and we would like to shape that future in a good way. Sometimes they are asking, you know, so doing all this stuff, sustainable products, is something having a business case? Yes, because when you look at business case, when you look at the business case, we are selling more with the sustainable products. Now, looking at all this stuff, just to give you the last word, think about the future. I'm not talking to the people at my age, for the young guys. This will be your future. And you need to get the control of your future. It's not about the technology only, it's not about the money. As human beings, you need to shape a better future for all of us. It's time, and this time is the best time to shape that kind of a future. Thank you very much for listening for this hour of the day.
Shem, before you get off the stage, I have two questions for you. First of all, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very wide and encompassing presentation. As a leader in a consumer goods company, what scares you from a disruption perspective? What keeps you awake at night?
I think the agility of the competition. When I say competition, not the big ones.
Right.
Startups, because at the end, they are fast to decide, execute, and they are brave to experiment, fail, and come up again. So in this case, that is the right thing to do. That's why we are making all these programs, because we would like to be a startup company as well. It may be oxymoron for you, but there may be some, corporate entrepreneurship as well. That's why we are trying to shape our company as well in the same way.
And is there, for the young people, do you think there's scope to build a new Unilever, the Unilever of the future?
Sure.
How old is Unilever? Just tell everybody how old the company
is. In fact, when you look at the Unilever, it's around 1873 is the start. 1930 it becomes Unilever with the combination of two companies, 1930. Therefore, it's nearly 100 years at the moment, or less more than 100 years. You don't need 100 years, guys, because when you look at the size of some new companies, in 10 years, they are very tangible, they have very tangible sizes. And even Unilever, certainly, because they will create those kind of groups and they will go. But the point over there, again, the same agility, because if you are so big and if you start to lose that mindset, then you have some people chasing you.
Yeah. So you need to be agile, quick on your feet.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We have a small token of appreciation for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, before we wrap up, a couple of housekeeping issues. I know some of you are itching to go home, but we're not done just yet. I'm told to tell you a couple of things, reminders. Please ask the delegates to take a moment to scan the QR code for feedback on your badge. Take out your badge if you can do it now. There's a QR code on it. Scan that code. And I think some survey magically appears on your phone that you should fill out. Okay, if you can do that for me now, I'll give you 2 minutes to get that done. There's a couple of people looking at me. They're not doing their surveys for some reason. Can you please get out your badge? Yes, thank you. And do your surveys. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm watching you. I don't know if you're holding your phone in your hand. Okay. Yeah. Someone's saying I'm doing it on my watch. No, you're not. Stop lying to us. Good. So this is now reminder number 1. It says here, remind them to register for 3 breakout sessions happening tomorrow. Are they supposed to register now? Still? Anytime they can still register now on their way out. So if you've not registered for one of the 3 breakouts tomorrow, do that now on your way out. Please see someone at the booth. We have 3 different breakouts that can explain to you more. Also, it says here, remind them to bring their badges with them tomorrow as well. So bring your badges tomorrow because we'll need that QR code again. So can you please bring your I was going to say bring your QR codes, bring your badges tomorrow as well, please. I can see some people in the back not filling out your feedback form. Have you all filled it out in the back there? Did you scan your QR code? Put up your hand if you did your survey. Okay, yeah, and some of you are lying. I know some of you are lying. Okay, before we wrap up, I just wanted to very quickly, if we can have some mics, I wanted to get a sense of, especially from the young people, because this is primarily aimed at the young people, but not exclusively, biggest takeaway for today, before we wrap up. What is your biggest takeaway from today? Put up your hand if you want to contribute. Biggest takeaway from today. Then I'm going to pick on someone, and we'll come to you in a moment. I'm going to pick on this gentleman who's, I believe you're a VC guy, Middle East Ventures, Middle East Partners, what is your company? Well, you're very welcome, sir. Biggest takeaway for today. Someone, can we give the bearded gentleman here his mic?
Yeah, I would say I'm surprised just coming to the Middle East. This is my second time, not to Bahrain, but to Dubai and some of the other countries. Me as a VC, I'm looking for countries that are economic development focused, very much in terms of growing their GDP in new ways, in innovative ways outside of, say, oil, for example. Ways that we can partner with you from the West, coming from Canada. That was the first country I ever invested in. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of money. But the spiritual takeaway, the development that we received on the intangibles outside of the straight finance were unbelievable, right? And so as a young entrepreneur, it's tough to justify some of those means, but when you're in it for the long haul, you look for those kinds of people, those governments, those forward-thinking leaders, those unreasonable folk like yourself. And for me, taking away from this, it's like, you guys are so much more advanced in some ways, right, than we are in the West. So
yes, we are.
I truly applaud you for that. And just given the striking growth from some of these nations, 20% year-over-year GDP growth, these kinds of crazy numbers, it's nuts why the West isn't focusing more over here. So kudos to you guys for that, and excited to see where this crazy thinking takes us.
Thank you for coming, sir. Thank you for your feedback. We had one lady in the back. Here, yes, I think you put up your hand. Can we have a mic here? And then I think we'll let people go, because their brains are probably fried.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll just start. So we learned that we should not be afraid to think outside the box and should not be afraid to take chances with the ideas that we have. All it requires is implementation. And the other thing that I learned personally was that we have a gold mine of opportunities that we don't look at. And this summit was really, really helpful for us to recognize those opportunities in terms of like when people, for example, someone who takes an accounting course or a bachelor's degree, they would think that they have rigid choices just like working at the bank or something like that. But this summit teaches us to be more creative in our ways and applying the knowledge that we learn in a more creative way and finding new ways to apply that and be more innovative, basically.
Fantastic, and I think what you basically just described is the very purpose of the summit, is to just trigger some thinking and some different thought patterns that, they say 1 degree change in direction in the long term could end up, end you up in a completely different place. So thank you for that feedback.
It's a great program. I hope it happens every year.
It will happen every year. Thank you very much. Guys, you are the brave ones. Wait, okay, we have one more thing. And then I'm going to wrap up by saying you are the brave ones. One more thing and then one more feedback.
First of all, thank you so much for the summit. I can tell you it was very much worth skipping a class for.
Good.
If there's one thing to take back home is definitely do not stop where I am. I'm one person who is always overwhelmed by the amount of choices that I have, and therefore I stop where I am. And if there's one thing that I totally learned is to keep on walking with my thoughts and not really look at things as unreasonable. It's unreasonable to stop studying something, to go with my thoughts and go with my inspiration, because it really seems unreasonable, especially based on how we live our modern life and how our parents raise us. Is education comes first and GPA comes first, and your ideas can always be set up after a certain age, and you're too young for this, or there isn't really a certain age for whatever my thoughts can lead me. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Love that feedback. Well said. Well said. Well done for lasting since 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. ايش رايك؟